carved upon a marble altar somewhere in a lab are runes that match an amulet upon an onyx slab. Doctor in a white coat, guards in olive drab, Kissinger unconscious, but as Providence would have, when the doctor stands beside him and he holds out the medallion, unconsciously, instinctively, he reaches up and grabs. Deep inside a black site that is right beneath our streets, the sacrifice was made by which they demonized our speech. The roots that fed the tree of life decayed beneath our feet, and its sap was a suspension for a small medallion piece. As the doctor starts to sway a bit, he takes the vial and places it inside of Cheney's heart that it might never cease to beat. And I wish it wasn't so, but no, the final piece to mention is the one that fueled our overlord's unholiest ascension, to afford him zero comment on the char and the distension on the bodies in Lahaina, or that growing sickly stench of every Black Rock vulture gathered for what Biden paid as rent on the medallion shard they gave him on the eve of the convention. He had seen its strength extend the life of all his favorite vermin, and the peace that he inherited had come from Father Thurmond. Another artifact he had been gifted by the Germans, to see one's will made manifest, one's destiny determined. A note attached read, "All our best, Werner, Fritz, and Hermann. May you marinate in Wehrmacht that ferments behind the curtains." Now here we are today, and Biden keeps it on his person. If Biden's what you'd even call a person. And the curse is something ancient. It is raw abortifacient that they shoveled down the throats of those who built and birthed a nation. It is fused into those corpses funding war on all occasions, and it's all that's kept McConnell from a state of vegetation. It is carried by the Senate doctors, whispered by the nurses. It's a perk to keep you perky for your centuries of service. It's the concentrated evil that's been powering our purges and coaxing every coup along, the dogs and drones and dirges. The nations we have raped because they would not consent to purchase. It pries our leaders' eyes awake and drives our country's urges to the darkest point where human hope and human truth converges. So look in Biden's eyes and see the rush on which he surges is the same that lit the flame that burned your churches. And those flames have had their day to see the vessels burned away, but the medallion, unscathed, always emerges. For as election season licks its lips and smells its purpose, there at once appears a motorcade of hearses. The calling of the pit like a liturgical insurgent, skinning off a sermon from the verses. He clutches a medallion of which he is just a servant, falling down a path with no divergence. Now some people wonder loudly just how low a man can go. Well, somewhere in a lab they've logged effects of pure immersion. How long can someone lay upon that ancient onyx slab before rising up a wholly different person? How blackened can one be within the ink of human greed before their voters start to see a different version? How corrupted from within before you see it in their skin? How blighted till it rises to the surface? Till it bleeds into your eye, or you stand from time to time staring off into the press like they were comets in the skies? How long until your arteries start clogging up with flies? How long till child labor phantoms haunt you in the night? How long has the medallion been deciding who survives? How long till it demands a higher price?
Last stand.
and I came to deliver. Been called a Clinton operative, a Russian, and a grifter. By libs, a Washington student debt, proud to be an intern, sucking up to pigs who get a tax cut in the midterms. You cut the ties but never heal the wrist burns. Capitalist shackles wrap and penetrate like ringworms around the necks of those whose deaths will not affect the king's purse or the coffers of the company the king serves, who manufacture mandated tinctures. Their safety data hanging from a fixture, half a mile skyward, just dangling from the rafters. My grift is sobbing till I'm cackling with laughter. I guess I would have made a decent actor. I'd be great at crying on command until they cut plus 40 minutes after. When the director waves a hand, it ain't a rap, it's now a legal matter. Honey, my grift is weeping on a mic until I'm hacking up airstrike verses like it's bombs away and batter up. Swinging on these bigots, they keep killing us to fatten up. Kill the switch, eat the rich, I think they're finally fat enough. Grab your knife and fork, the world is yours, just say you've had enough. And if you're comfy, you could go ahead and laugh it up. Tell me how the most important vote I'll ever cast is like the choosing of a bus, in that it might not take you anywhere you want, but no one can deny the fact the bus is now no longer where it was. And that's the kind of progress we should celebrate and trust. Spoken like a kid who never took a bus. Spoken like a piece of shit that used some cash to mask his stink and truly thinks he's one of us. Spoken like a terminally unserious person who equates our cries for rights to mixed up orders from a server. It paints a privileged picture of what you would label urgent if the worst thing you've experienced in life has been the time your waiter accidentally brought a tray of gold flake scallop when you clearly ordered gold flake urchin. And now you're storming out the restaurant and hopping in a Tesla. You got 80 pounds of Tony Fauci merchant.
Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind 2 chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride.
Best to place your bets on weaponizing the identity of every limp progressive claiming grassroots integrity. Policy is a slippery slope for all of its complexity, so flex your brave resistance with this Ilhan Omar NFT. Numbered 1 of 723. Each depicts her valiantly championing a bill before she lays it at a donor's feet. And she can throw her hands up in the air with AOC and say if only Nina Turner could have voted present too, that's why we need another seat. We need some more progressives we elect to only tweet, who live to serve Humana and their label of elective slapped on every patient's gravest needs. And every station plays the theme that medical professionals agree on the effectiveness and safety of injections authorized for this emergency. And in purely unrelated news, the profits of the ones who manufacture vaccines just increased by nearly 36 billion with a fucking B. Sometimes it feels like we're the only ones that see. Sometimes it feels like all of us are lost at sea. And every time we think we see an island on the tip of the horizon, it turns out to be another measure making sure we're kept within the watchful eye of murderous authority. And so I guess my grift is crying for the future they denied us, where the people who would buy us are a mockable minority. And we are more than genomes under warranty. And we are more than serfs in constant quarantine. If I had a single breath left, I'd let the chorus scream. I'd announce our leaders claiming none for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me.
Rewind to a chance won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind to a chance won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? Hi, everyone. Oh, my goodness. It is Tuesday night. Mindy Greenwood, how are you over on Substack? I see you over there. Good timing. Just got here. Every Man an Island. Yes, that's true. Joe Blank, thank you. Kieran, thanks for the $10. Really appreciate that. Good to see you, brother. I see Sean, the Accord Lord, is here. I see YZ. Good to see you. Welcome, whoever you are, but I've never seen you before, but good to see you. And glad you were here and checking out INN and Indie News Now live. Old Man Barker's here. Oh, all right. We got a regular party going. Okay. Descent in Bloom I saw here too. Hi. Yeah, we got a packed, loaded show tonight. And I didn't really think I was going to have that much of a lineup, but like it happens every week, shit just keeps happening. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I have to actually cut a story because I've got too much. And I still might have too much, but I don't care. We're going to go. We're going to get through all this because Substack is pulling some crap. That's going to be the last story that we get to. That's the audible that I called. Originally, I was going to do another story about the elites and the words globalize the intifada. Great article by Jonathan Cook. But I thought it was a little close to the rest of the fuck Israel stuff I was doing. And then this Substack stuff popped up, this age verification stuff that I teased in the title. And it's causing havoc on creators, on subscribers, and the only one that's happy with all this so far, it seems to be, is Stripe, because they make money on fees. Vicky Adams, how are you? Good to see you. So yeah, this is going to be our last, my last news live stream of the year. I'm going to take off next Tuesday night, but we're going to do an Uncensored Boats on Sunday. Thursday night, and I don't know if you've been watching, but we've been doing the 12 days of fuck Israel. So we just finished day 10 about half an hour before the show started. And that's been running on all the INN channels. And actually the streams for How Do We Miss That and Indie News Now don't go to INN newsletter. So it's an opportunity to get those segments over to that publication as well. And we're going to get through Christmas Day is going to be day 12. And we're a day behind in emailing out the podcast versions of the live streams, the replays. So, yeah, we're going to get through a bunch of news. We're going to talk about ICE. Descent in Bloom wrote a killer article. It's heartbreaking about what the hell happened in Columbus. I think a lot of you might have seen it, but I still want to talk about it. I want to get it documented because a year from now, people aren't necessarily going to remember it as much. And I want to make sure that we covered it here. We're also going to talk about more ICE fuckery, people dying in ICE facilities, which is no surprise. But like I said, Descent in Bloom was writing stuff about Alligator Alcatraz and Geo Group and ICE facilities 6, 8, 10 months ago. And a lot of that stuff is now coming to fruition. And people are dying because they're just holding people indefinitely. They're freezing them. They're starving them. They're not medicating them. They're not giving them proper medical attention. And stuff is happening as a result. And it's terrible. So we're going to talk about that. And then I've got a quick lightning round for everyone. Actually, it's not so quick. And we're going to get through that one of my least favorite outlets. We're going to talk a little bit about them. We're going to talk about preparing for a war with China and seeing all the pieces being moved in place for that. Hey, did you know there was a general strike somewhere in South America? We're going to talk about that. And a NASCAR hero who I was a big fan of died in a fiery crash this week, and I wanted to make mention of him. And we'll get to that later on tonight. So before we get started, I always ask you to please support independent media. The ways to do that are right there on that board. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network, and paypal.me/Indie News Network. Those are the best ways to do it. Monthly recurring, you can also get to patreon.com/Indie News Network. Then we are live at IndieNewsNow.com. That's the name of the show. It's also the name of a website that curates news 24/7, that streams anything that INN has got live or co-streaming, and also links to merch and other items from the network. You can also break it down by articles, podcasts, and videos. I bring in stuff from Rumble. Nobody else is really doing that on a website like this, and proud of that. And then also we're live on Substack right now at IndieMediaToday.com, and we've been live at INNNewsletter.com. That's where all the Fuck Israel segments go. That's where the Nobody Wants to Work Anymore show that I do with Snow Himbo goes. That's where INN News goes. That's where Boat Smashing into Other Boats goes. That's where INN One-on-One goes. There's a lot of reasons to subscribe to INNNewsletter.com, completely separate from IndieMediaToday.com. By the way, I'm working on 3 tech articles for Indie Media Today. One of them talking about what's going on with Substack, but also something going on with Rumble. I noticed something the other day, or actually earlier today. I was watching AM Wake Up and watching on Rumble as I do daily and hanging out in chat. And somebody said that they wanted to subscribe monthly. How do I do that? My locals thing expired for Ryan. I'm like, oh, you can just sub to his channel. So I go to his channel and I look it up, and there's no option to subscribe to a channel anymore. And that sucks for creators. And I'm going to explain why, because creators were getting just about the full $5 a month from any channel subscription that was happening. So now what Rumble wants you to do is subscribe to Rumble Premium, which is $99 a year or $10 a month. Right? Rumble gets all that money. The creators don't. Only the ones that jump through the hoops to participate in their premium creator program. I don't know anyone that does. You've got to stream 200 hours a month. You got to use their software. You then have to use their ad network, to do ad reads and stuff. I don't want to do any of that. I thought you could channel subscribe. You can't do that anymore, apparently, over at Rumble. You can gift a subscription. So anybody watching, randomly, it will gift them a subscription. You can do that to up to 50 people at once. Or you can Rumble Rant, but Rumble gets 50% off the top of that. So I'm a little upset with what Rumble did there. They removed the one thing where they were passing on the full subscription cost to the creators. Now that's gone now. So the one way that creators could maybe game around the system and tell people to subscribe instead, that's now gone. And Rumble's taking a good chunk of any other revenue that comes in. I'm not sure how many they take from gift subscriptions, honestly. But I would guess that it's more than the couple of percentage points. What a mess. All right, so I do want to get to, let's start to get to Dissent in Bloom's article, and we will talk about what ICE has been doing in Columbus, Ohio. How many of you even knew that ICE is now infiltrating and assaulting Columbus, fucking Ohio? Why? Well, Dissent in Bloom, who lives there, explained that it is the second largest Somali population, and we know that what the Trump administration has been doing has been targeting individual communities. First it was Venezuelans, now it's apparently Somalis, like they're doing in Minnesota and now in Columbus. So that's kind of what one of the assessments of what's happening here. Our article starts that ICE targets school zones in Columbus and families are being detained. All right, students reported watching entire families pulled from their cars outside Dublin Scioto High as ICE staged outside of other schools serving immigrant and refugee communities in Ohio. And this was with the cops standing by or aiding them. Wow. Yeah. On December 19th, school let out early in Columbus, and children did what they always do. Kids were expecting to go home with family for winter break and all the coming festivities of the holidays. This is the Friday before winter break. They slung backpacks over one shoulder. They checked their phones. They waited in pickup lines and walked familiar routes home, thinking about winter break, about holidays, sleeping in. Small relief that comes with the end of exams. Some were already arguing with their siblings over who's going to sit in the front seat. Some are texting parents that they could see just down the road. A car door opening is usually nothing, but that day it was everything. Students at Dublin Scioto, a high school located in the Dublin suburb of Columbus, watched as entire families were pulled from their vehicles just outside campus. These kids learned that in real time, whatever protections adults promise about schools being safe had evaporated the moment federal immigration enforcement had decided otherwise. What's happening in Columbus is part of a larger escalation. More than 200 ICE agents have been deployed here in the weeks following Trump's comment on the Somali people, referring to them as garbage earlier this month. Wow. For those who are unaware, Columbus holds one of the largest Somali communities in the country. Since then, enforcement has spread outward. More stops, more detentions. For ICE, looking foreign is enough. In one video, a passerby asked police on scene if the people detaining family are ICE. The officer says they don't know and tells the passersby to keep moving. If police don't know who's detaining people in unmarked cars, figuring that out should probably be the priority. Dublin City School Superintendent Dr. John Marshausen, who was recently addressed by the ACLU over Dublin's First Amendment violations tied to transgender student activism, has publicly denied that these abductions even occurred. So now you've got a willing administrator, a co-conspirator. The video evidence, along with the accounts of students and families at Dublin Scioto, contradict that denial. This piece of shit right here. Here's one student that says, I'm a student there. They took students walking home when exams ended. They pulled parents and students out of their cars on the way out of the student pickup line. I don't know what happened to some of my friends, but I know I might never, ever see them again. I don't ever want to hear a high school kid saying that, ever. And then for the superintendent to deny that it even happened, that is just gaslighting of the Democratic proportions. Targeting the dismissal bell, which of course they did. What became clear over the course of the day was that it was not a random act of cruelty, but a planned citywide operation. Immigration vehicles were positioned near multiple schools at once, spanning nearly every level of education. Children exiting a school day don't have lawyers. They don't have a warning. They don't have a choice. And they weren't just outside international schools. They were also positioned at public and private, elementary, middle, and high schools, all happening at the same time. This is what our money is going towards. This is what our resources are spending money on. By nightfall, the perimeter expanded, and raids were witnessed in private student housing tied to the Ohio State University campus. My guess is they were going after the student protesters. Quote, they mostly targeted girls. Most of them I know are freshmen, aka 14 years old. Barely a teenager, their first year of high school, and now they're getting kidnapped from a place that should be safe. All right, this is a video outside Horizon Science Academy. I don't think there was any sound to that. 4 agents waited outside a Horizon Science Academy with smiles plastered across their faces like they were going to greet a kid. One student at St. James the Less, a Catholic elementary and middle school in Columbus, described ICE attempting to enter the school during an early release day. I did not think they were allowed to do that. According to the student, office staff refused to let agents inside, which they should. ICE then just waited nearby and stopped parents as they tried to pick up their kids. In at least one school, there was no confusion about what was happening. The response was immediate. Quote, "We were having parents pick up kids early yesterday and getting them out as fast as possible. My school is in the middle of this." In the front of Westland High School, witnesses report watching as ICE chasing someone in broad daylight right outside the school. Their presence was also reported at Norton Middle School, Whetstone High School, Riverside Elementary, Columbus International, Imagine Great Western Academy, Valley View, HSA Primary, and schools in the Gahanna and Westerville city schools. This may not even be a complete list. One parent reported that ICE drove through the area around World Language Middle School and Coleraine Elementary, testing the edges of the neighborhood. The community responded immediately. People surrounded the schools, made themselves visible, and refused to move. The vehicles kept driving. That's the power of people. It didn't undo what happened. It didn't return parents to cars or erase what children saw. But it meant this: when the state showed up to take, people showed up to protect. And not even the state, but when the feds, because these aren't even state, although, as she points out, that Columbus is only one city in a long line of cruelty. What unfolded in Columbus was clear. Families pulled from cars outside schools, cops appearing at dismissal across campuses. Police say they didn't know who was detaining people? Okay. School officials denied what students and parents say they witnessed. All of it happened as a surge of ICE agents moved through a city with one of, again, the largest Somali communities in the country. What a coincidence. Children, again, watched adults fail to protect the spaces they were told were safe. Parents learned how quickly routine can be interrupted. Communities learned how wide the operation really was. But people didn't disappear into thin air. Neighbors showed up. Parents surrounded schools. Students spoke. The presence of enforcement was met with the presence of community, and that mattered. We fight for one another because survival has always been a collective act. And because there's going to be nobody else there to fight for us if we don't fight for each other. She says she'll keep following ICE in Columbus and beyond. She'll keep documenting where they go, what people see, and what institutions deny, and what corporate media refuses to talk about. She refuses to look away from someone else's pain because they're someone else's child, someone else's parent, someone's whole world. And this will remain a place to share information, to warn another, and to stand together, because none of us should have to face this alone. And support her over on Ko-fi, support her over at Substack, dissentinbloom.substack.com. There's also a Signal group I think she has set up. She's got a link tree, which you can find linked here at her Substack. But we got a little bit more information after that, which was yesterday, that Operation Buckeye, because the Ohio is the Buckeye state, is the cutesy name that ICE has given their occupation of Central Ohio. This is a documented, but again, still incomplete map of their abductions and the level of escalation throughout the week. Data is from ICE Out, which is a website that tracks ICE abductions and arrests and behavior, activity, vehicle movement, and everything else. I mean, more than worrisome, and coming to a city near you. Houston could this very easily, I mean, it's not going to, my guess is that it's not going to happen in red cities, but who knows? Yeah, Talking Wombat, great reporting. 100%. It's her backyard too. Like, this is really personal for her. All right. Even pigs with their IDs have no accountability. Terrible. But yeah, I mean, you have all of these different points where they're hitting a certain region, starting the biggest escalations on the 19th, Friday, and Saturday the 20th, as people are doing their Christmas shopping. And then again on the 22nd, look at all this spreading out. And meanwhile, all these people that are being picked up, where do they end up? In ICE detention facilities, where private prisons are making money, getting paid by the state of Ohio and the feds to house them, process them, feed them, and all the other feeder industries that go into this. And for what? For what? Is this we're not, there is this imagined quote unquote infiltration of a country where resources are being absorbed that should be going to quote unquote American citizens. It's all brainwashed bullshit in order to clamp down on authoritarianism from both sides. Because remember, Democrats funded ICE just as much as Republicans are utilizing ICE. And Democrats would be doing shit like this themselves. Not necessarily in the same way, but they would certainly be using it. This is real bad. And again, this is bipartisan because we're being screwed by both parties simultaneously, and they're both getting paid by the private prison industry gobs of money to either look the other way or help out. So great reporting. I mean, no, outstanding reporting, 100%. Really appreciate the work that she does and the follow-up and the time put in. Again, remember that this woman is also full-time employee nurse, mom, runs other stuff on the side, and is engaged on top of it. Wow. Remarkable. And independent. So support independent media, just like support INN. And she is an INN supporter. She's up there, actually highlighted up there on one of the later columns, because she's one of the consistent supporters to INN and contributors as well. Really appreciate her work. Some of the other people that got highlights recently, Ralph Mejia, we appreciate him so much, really. And Paula has always stepped up so much. And even with the Justice for Aspen, all the sharing that she does, same thing with Fred Edward. This isn't just about contributing money, although these are for the people that have contributed some cash. Some of the people there, it's because of the amount that they share the show. Share the show. We need people to share the show because we're shadow banned like crazy. We are suppressed beyond belief. People tell me all the time that our shows should have 5 times the viewers that they have, and they don't understand why we're not getting the views that we get. I don't understand it either. We just keep doing the show. And we appreciate everyone that shares and everyone that supports. Again, let me go back. The ways to do that are with Cash App, $ Indie News Network. We like to separate our money from the platforms themselves because we're going to talk about what happened with Substack and Stripe later on in the show. ko-fi.com/Indie News Network funnels money to PayPal. PayPal.me/Indie News Networks. Another way to do that, do it as friends and family. And then patreon.com/Indie News Network. We've got a bunch of paid Patreon subscribers to the network. Thank you for that. So we wanted to put that up. IndieNewsNow.com is our Stripe link where you can tip us directly through our website. And then over at Substack, if you do want to subscribe monthly or annually, IndieMediaToday.com is where we're live now. And INNNewsletter.com is the other newsletter that I publish for the entire network that we're a part of, that I'm a co-founder of, that Snow Hembo is also part of. All right. He still doesn't get INN notifications or see my stuff in the YouTube feed. Figures, not surprising at all. It's frustrating as hell that I put out a ton of content all the time through multiple platforms. Thank you, Lady Alex M, sharing and liking. That's, again, super important to do that. Thank you. Share the show. Okay, next we are going to get to, what do we got? Oh, more ICE stuff. So again, we've been warning about what's happening in ICE facilities and worry that where it's going to lead, which is deportations, which it has, of unjust people that should not be deported, but also people being held well beyond where they should be held. So that's habeas corpus and right to a speedy trial. That's gone completely out the window. And it's happening in private detention facilities so that technically everybody can kind of claim deniability or at least some lack of responsibility, with the exception of the private corporations, I guess. And there seems to be no accountability for them whatsoever. So what am I talking about? First, this from Faces of Haiti. In Newark's Delaney Hall detention facility, Haitian detainee Jean Wilson Brutus, 41, has died in ICE custody. ICE cites a suspected natural cause. Again, his death is one of 4 in ICE detention this week. So I wanted to talk about the 4 people who died in ICE detention. This was one of them. Another one was out of Chicago, and this was a Bulgarian man on Channel 7 in Eyewitness News in Chicago. So let me run this real quick, and hopefully this will work. I don't see the volume. Oh, I guess I still don't hear. So there it is.
They have serious concerns about the medical care he received prior to his death, and for hundreds more detained at this ICE facility. This letter from Immigration and Customs Enforcement to Nenko Ganchev's wife is the only communication she's received from federal officials since Ganchev died Monday at the North Lake Correctional Facility, a private prison in Baldwin, Michigan. That facility is contracted by ICE to hold undocumented migrants.
They believed he collapsed and that it may have been a heart attack, and that was it.
Anna is a family spokesperson who asked the I-Team not to use her last name or Ganchev's wife's name out of fears for their safety. Although Ganchev's wife is a U.S. citizen, she too is fearful of reprisal. The day she was notified of her husband's death was the couple's 8-year wedding anniversary.
It's enough to know that your husband died in custody. It's enough to know that it was an awful place to die. She's so beyond upset.
Geo Group, the private prison company that owns and operates the North Lake Correctional Facility, referred all questions surrounding Ganchev's death to ICE officials. After multiple inquiries from the ABC7 I-Team, ICE published this statement online saying Ganchev's death is, quote, suspected to be from natural causes, but, quote, the official cause of death is still under investigation. Going on to say, according to initial reports, Ganchev was discovered unresponsive on the floor of his cell during routine checks. Facility medical staff responded, began CPR, and contacted local emergency medical services. A Michigan medical examiner's office said no cause or manner of death has been certified yet.
A wonderful human being. If you needed something, he would be there for you no matter what.
Ganchev's wife and close friends tell the I-Team he first moved to Chicago 30 years ago on a student visa and owned a trucking company for more than a decade. Ganchev was taken into custody by federal immigration agents in September at a scheduled green card interview.
It's the last time she ever saw him alive.
His wife and friends say Ganchev suffered from type 2 diabetes and told his wife no accommodations were made for his condition in custody.
The stress alone can create those blood sugar spikes, and he was not feeling well progressively.
Ganchev was also one of hundreds of people a federal judge in Chicago ordered released on bond last month, as his warrantless arrest may have violated an existing consent decree. But that order was blocked by an appeals court, keeping Ganchev locked up.
It's beyond confusing to get any information.
Now, in a statement, ICE labeled Ganchev a criminal, but court records reviewed by the I-Team show previous arrests by Chicago police. Despite those arrests, Ganchev was never charged with any serious crimes, only traffic violations. U.S. Representative Delia Ramirez of Chicago is called
Here we
for
go again. Traffic violations. Sound familiar?
Into Mr. Ganchev's death, saying there have been numerous complaints of inhumane conditions and inadequate medical care at North Lake. The Department of Homeland Security has called all allegations of poor treatment false.
Sure, it's all false. Fake news. Remember that, like, these ABC stations are owned by Tribune Company or who's the other one? Sinclair Broadcasting, and they're total like propagandist Trump administration fans. But in this case, they're actually like, again, these are local residents. They have friends, family locally. This guy died in ICE custody in Michigan. All right, so I'm bringing a World Socialist website that actually mentions both of these. Patrick Martin, Nancy Hanover, 4 immigrants die in 4 days in ICE private prisons. Why do we even have private prisons? 4 immigrants died in ICE custody during a 4-day period last week, all of them in detention facilities run by private prison companies, 3 by Geo Group, and 1 in a prison run by Core Civic. That's Delaney Hall in Newark. That was, I think, when the mayor of Newark tried to get in there and they had tried to arrest him. The 4 were from 4 different countries. One from Haiti, Delvin Francisco Rodriguez from Nicaragua, Fawad Saeed Abdul Qadir from Eritrea, and Nenko Stanyev Ganchev from Bulgaria. All right. All 4 died suddenly of medical conditions ranging from chest pain to diabetes, according to reports released by ICE, because they're the most trustworthy people. Brutus died the day after he arrived at the Geo Group facility in Newark, while Abdul Qadir died at the Moshannon Valley Processing Center, also run by Geo Group, in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, after 215 days in ICE custody. I believe that's also where they were holding Kilmore Abrego Garcia, known as one of the more treacherous ICE facilities around the country, like the one in Louisiana. Man. Okay, so Abdul Qadir's death came only 3 days after he filed federal lawsuit seeking an emergency habeas corpus petition, citing, among other reasons, inadequate access to medical care. So they killed him, allegedly. Or at least they did not give him the medical care that allowed him to no longer exist. Wow. Ganchev, as it said, had lived in the U.S. for more than a quarter century, was married to an American citizen, and was seeking permanent resident status on that basis. And he died at the Geo Group North Lake Processing Center in Baldwin, Michigan, in the northern part of the Lower Peninsula. I thought you automatically got a green card for marrying an American citizen. How long ago did they get married? Didn't that automatically give you citizenship? Awful. Rodriguez, and even if so, like, again, why are they picking these people up? Why are they arresting them? They're not actual criminals. Traffic violations. Rodriguez here was pronounced dead at a hospital in Natchez, Mississippi, after the staff at the Adams County Detention Center, operated for ICE by Core Civic, found him unresponsive and lacking a pulse. This is what they do. Anyone that steps out of line, a squeaky wheel, this is the kind of shit we were talking about with Aspen, talking about in the county lockup in Georgia. And it's just the same shit in this stuff, only it's worse because it's private facilities that don't have any oversight by the state or by the feds at all. They don't care. 4 detainee deaths in 1 week is a red-hot crisis, said Eunice Cho, senior counsel at the ACLU National Prison Project. There is no question in my mind that this represents a clear deterioration of medical care and the worsening conditions in ICE detention. I don't know if they were ever good in the first place. I think they've been covering it up and it's just getting out. What happened at Chrome Detention Center in Miami? What happened at Alligator Alcatraz? 600 people fucking disappeared. ICE recently claimed that in-custody deaths this past year averaged less than 1%. Why was it greater than 0? Boasting that this figure was the lowest in ICE history. Because you've detained more fucking people than ever, so 1% is... How about the total volume number of people? Yeah, that's right. They got it. given that the total number of migrants held in ICE detention facilities has now topped 66,000, the highest ever. The less than 1% boast means that ICE would be pleased if fewer than 660 migrants died this year in their care under private facility that were paying hundreds of dollars a day per migrant to house, to treat like shit. Both the statistic and the boast are indications of the deliberate indifference to the physical survival of immigrant detainees that permeates the repressive apparatus of the U.S. government, is being whipped up further by the demonization of immigrants by Trump and top aides like douchebag Stephen Miller and cunt Kristi Noem. At least 32 migrants have died in ICE custody so far this year, while several others have died while fleeing ICE agents or in facilities not run under contract for the agency, but still fucking died. In December alone, 7 migrants have died in ICE custody, making it the worst month for such deaths in recent history. This is being done on purpose. This is being done to scare the crap out of people. This is being done to start to get rid of the people that are speaking out and speaking up, and to warn everybody else around that this is what's going to happen to you if you do. Fucking horrible. The 3 other December deaths are Francisco Gaspar Andres from Guatemala, who is being held at the Camp East Montana detention facility run by Acquisition Logistics on the grounds of Fort Bliss, Texas, near El Paso. So it's like onesies and twosies all over the place, but somebody's dying everywhere. Why? Pete Sumalo Montejo, 72 from the Philippines. Why? He had been detained at the Montgomery Processing Center, which is a GEO Group facility, again in Texas, near Houston this time. And then you've got the Pakistani immigrant who died at Prairie Land, another one in Texas. What the fuck's going on in Texas? Many of the facilities at which these deaths took place have been cited frequently by immigrant rights groups because of poor housing, food, and access to medical care, or exceptional brutality by staff and ICE agents. Although staff are not ICE agents, staff are GEO Group facility employees or Core Civic private employees of a publicly traded company that contracts with the U.S. government. The chief investigator at the GEO Conroe facility, for example, Charles Syringi, pled guilty last month to attacking a detainee, slamming him into a wall, dragging him across the floor, and then choking him before finally slamming his head into a window. Again, this is the chief investigator, not like enforcer. Immigrants' rights groups have repeatedly called for the closure of the GEO Group facility in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, where 3 migrants have died in the past 18 months, one a suicide, the other 2 of supposedly natural causes, which is what they say when they don't want to implicate the guard or one of the other inmates, because that would open a further inquiry. So, natural causes, case closed, coroner signs off on it, and it's all done. And nobody can investigate. The sadistic ill treatment of migrants did not begin when Trump re-entered the White House in January. This is why I brought World Socialist website. The damn trots. They know. The ACLU called for the Biden admin to close the Core Civic facility in Natchez, where Delvin Francisco Rodriguez died, as long ago as 2021. And sponsored a similar appeal for the shutdown of the GEO Phillipsburg facility in 2024. Where's Lurch, your stroke-ridden senator? I've never heard him say a word about this. Because he loves ICE. Because Israel loves ICE. And here's the story about the case of Nenko. We talked about him. Okay, we just watched the ABC report about the American citizen wife. I want people to know what happened to him. A man who lived 30 years here, hardworking, paid taxes, and they treated him like an animal. They were so rude to him. They treated him like he was a murderer for a traffic fucking violation. He emphasized that despite living in the U.S. for 3 decades, paying taxes, and not being a criminal, her husband was treated with extreme harshness. Again, there's a 3,000 per day arrest quota that ICE has been set by Stephen Miller. I don't know if it's still that high, but I remember that it was 300 or 3,000 per day. There was a quota. They had to arrest it. They didn't care who. They release him later on and not charge him, but they had to arrest him. As the news report said that he had first arrived, Ganchev had arrived in Chicago on a student visa. According to ICE records, he was granted lawful permanent resident status in 2005. 20 years he's had his own business. In 2008, he owned and operated a trucking company called J&D Boys. All right. In 2009, USCIS denied his LPR status. Why? He married a U.S. citizen in 2017. And at the time of his arrest, he was in the process of applying for the green card through their marriage. So they've been married 8 years, and he still hadn't gotten a green card. I thought that you got that as soon as you got married, but I guess not. An immigration judge ordered his removal to Bulgaria on January 11th, 2023. Again, this is during the Biden administration. But he was called for an interview on his green card application on September 23rd. According to his wife, agents appeared to be waiting for him to arrive at the interview, and he was arrested. And of course, this was during Operation Midway Blitz, during which ICE and Border Patrol seized thousands of Chicagoans in sudden, heavily armed street and workplace violations. It was just a sweep of people, and then they'd figure it out later. Arrest them all and release the ones that weren't guilty. And say, sorry, maybe. But they weren't even saying sorry. They were just like, fuck you. Ganchev was among hundreds of people who were initially ordered released after the blatantly illegal warrantless snatch and grab arrests, fabricated information, and mass detentions of U.S. citizens and lawful residents were deemed potential violations of the Castañón-Nava consent decree. However, the Seventh Circuit Appeals Court blocked this release order, and now they should be personally held responsible for this man's death. Ganchev was told he could either submit to voluntary removal to Bulgaria or remain in custody at North Lake, hoping to eventually be granted bond. Like, what the fuck is this? What happened to due process? According to his wife, he chose to stay. He's got family here. He's got a life here. I told him, you have to make the decision, but please don't leave me here alone. His bond appeal was pending at the time of his death because, of course, Ganchev suffered from type 2 diabetes, and friends and family reported serious concerns about medical care that he received while detained. They don't give a shit about people maintaining their blood sugar. His wife told the ABC7 team that no dietary accommodations were made for his diabetic condition. Not a surprise. Again, they don't give a shit about any of their inmates. She and family friend Anna stated that there was no special diet and the food they were given was not adequate to maintain blood sugar levels. They want to keep them weak. The small amount of food provided was insufficient for maintaining his blood sugar levels, leading his family to send money through this facility system so he could purchase additional items from the commissary, right? His wife knew that something was wrong Monday night, last week, okay, the couple's 8th wedding anniversary, when she didn't receive his expected nightly phone call. When she searched for his name on the ICE locator website, it indicated that he had been released. She later learned from the Bulgarian embassy on the morning of December 17th that her husband had died. Wait, she found they released his body to the embassy? So what'd they do? Ship him back to Bulgaria to bury him? According to ICE's official account, which is all bullshit and you can't believe any of it, Ganchev was discovered unresponsive on the floor of his cell during routine checks on the evening of December 15th. It's possible because they probably didn't give him enough insulin or nourishment to be able to meet his diabetic condition. ICE stated that the death is suspected to be from natural causes, though the official cause of death remains under investigation. However, family members have told reporters that they received minimal information about what happened. Anna told the I-Team, quote, "To be honest, the family really hasn't learned much of anything. They believed that he collapsed and that it may have been a heart attack, and that's it. They gave his wife no other information. Nobody else called her. He was never rushed to a hospital. Did he ever see a coroner? Nobody from the prison, nobody from ICE, nobody from the government ever called her? This man died in their care." The brutal North Lake facility is also holding the latest of at least 4 young people from Detroit's Western International High School who've been abducted by ICE this year. Morba, 19, was born in Senegal and has recently graduated from high school. The night he was detained, he had been filling out college applications. That's exactly who they want to go after, exactly. Somebody who's intelligent and an immigrant that can actually speak out and organize. Yeah, they want to get rid of him for sure. Geo Group's documented history of neglect and abuse prompted the ACLU of Michigan to warn in June that the facility's reopening posed a, quote, "major threat to our immigrant friends and neighbors throughout Michigan and the Midwest," unquote. Those warnings have materialized rapidly, an understatement to say the fucking least. The Democrats have supported the massive buildup of ICE and CBP and the technical infrastructure they employ over decades, facilitating the expansion of the deportation apparatus and helping to normalize it. Remember, they called Obama the deporter-in-chief. Opposing the mobilization of the working class against the war on immigrants, they seek to manage and contain opposition. They are the muscle on behalf of the ruling class Republicans. To that end, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib visited Northlake on December 5th. She described alarming conditions. Food is brought straight to their cells. They report ice-cold temperatures with people trying to sleep in jackets under piles of thin blankets. Again, we heard this from Aspen in a Georgia prison, that it was freezing all the time, right? And that they didn't give enough blankets and that they didn't give adequate nourishment. Tlaib also reported multiple suicide attempts, including one just 2 weeks before her visit. That population had exceeded 1,400 detainees in that one fucking location. 66,000 detained nationwide. But such admissions prompt only crocodile tears and deep concern. The Biden admin's 2021 executive order to end private prison contracts proved purely cosmetic, leaving ICE detention facilities untouched and allowing Geo Group to simply wait for the political winds to shift. The result, a facility that had closed in 2022 was fully operational within months of Trump's return to office. I don't know what they would expect the Biden administration to do about making sure that facility was permanently shuttered. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know if anybody else does either. Further, Michigan state authorities under Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer actively collaborated with Geo Group to recruit and hire staff for the North Lake facility via Michigan Works. That's disgusting. The local chapter helped Geo Group organize job fairs and recruitment efforts beginning in 2019 when the facility reopened under its previous federal prison contract, and again in 2025 under the ICE contract. Shelley Keene, who's the executive director at Michigan Works West Central, recalled that in 2019 her office had received an early morning call about the contract. "We stopped, dropped, and rolled and did everything possible for Geo so that they could lock up relatively innocent immigrants that weren't bothering anybody." In August of 2025, over 30 immigrant advocacy groups signed an open letter urging Governor Whitmer to reject federal funding for the new ICE detention operations and ensure that Michigan Works would no longer collaborate with Geo Group. The letter stated, it's already unacceptable that Michigan Works is funneling taxpayer money and resources toward Geo Group so they can cash in on tearing families apart and locking up our immigrant neighbors in Baldwin. Yes. Good article from World Socialist website there. WSWS.org. Support independent media. All right. Fuck ICE, man. Oh my God. All right, Cowboy Kitty, we were gonna talk about Natalia later on, but I saw he posted here and it's already, you guys are chatting so much, it's already scrolled past. Genocide John is Uncle Festerman. Holocaust Hakeem is Lurch. That's funny. True. They're all in it together. And they all serve Israel too. I mean, all this stuff, private prison industry also is heavily tied in with Israel. Right? Where's the outrage from Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and ICE killing white men? Well, they don't consider anyone in an ICE facility to be a white man, even if he is from Bulgaria. He's an immigrant. Even if he was here 30 years doing all the right stuff. They removed all Ghost Art's face palms. Oh, come on. Rumble's pissing me off lately. Descendant Bloom says that this is exactly what they're doing in Columbus now. Frightening. All right, Tacoma's cool if the BS is happening. That makes it rough, right? It's just shameful. All right, a woman who will move with you to Bulgaria is a woman worth keeping. Sure, but again, they have a life now because the federal government decided that after 30 years, this is what's going on. That they don't want him here anymore for any reason. Fuck that. Thank you, Lady Alex. I appreciate you showing up and sharing and appreciating what we do, because I don't see enough people talking about stories like this. Kudos to Himbo for talking about ICE stuff. We've been talking about ICE and the shit that they've been doing all year long. We saw this right away. Okay? EMK the drummer, fuck ICE every day. Absolutely. All right? Mouse SF. Hey, Mouse, yesterday you said that somebody on Jimmy's show said, who are these people? Was that on the show, or were they using a soundboard and using that too? I don't know. Let me know. Ghost Art, yes, Mint Press News is under attack. We did a story about that last week, and that was clipped up and put on IndieMediaToday.com as a segment and all the different places. It will be looping, I'm sure, at some point over to Rumble as well. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Oh, there you go. Mouse says I got to go sample that from yesterday's. Okay, so they said it. Cool. Unreal. Soundboard. I have a soundboard. I don't use it nearly enough, but I do have it, and it says stuff like this. Nobody wants to work anymore. Yeah, nobody wants to work anymore, and then this guy.
Notice me, senpai. Notice me.
I've got stuff like that. I just think it doesn't necessarily fit when I'm talking about people being taken by ICE. But in the meantime, support independent media and support shows like this. Support World Socialist website. They're user funded also. And yeah, the ways to do that. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, codefee.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network, Patreon.com/Indie News Network, IndieNewsNow.com. There's a tab over there to keep the media free, and you can leave a tip there. And then you can subscribe over at Substack, IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live now, and INNNewsletter.com, where we also publish too. I wanted to also say thank you to Dave Rios, who dropped a Cash App earlier today and said thanks for doing the Fuck Israel streams and talking about Free Palestine and exposing all the stuff that the Zionists are doing. And not just Jews, Zionists. This is Jews and Christians and Arab Zionists as well. This is a Zionist project. All right? And I don't like to conflate Zionism and Judaism. They are two separate things. Okay, let's get back to this. And I want to get to, it's time for Fuck Israel. It's almost 11 o'clock. Good, we're running good on time. Fuck Israel Tide. All right. Two separate articles here that are pointing out and calling out, and I really like this writer for Left Voice. Left Voice is an Indie Media Award honoree. One of the better outlets out there when it comes to anti-imperialist reporting, when it comes to reporting from a socialist perspective, from calling out the duopoly, and really hoping and moving toward and planning toward and organizing toward a socialist world. Despite the ceasefire, Israel is still committing genocide in Gaza. Otto Fors, I brought articles from him before, and I really like his writing specifically over there. He's one of the writers that I really appreciate. Teresa Cozzarelli and Luigi Morris are two other ones I think are outstanding. There's also somebody in the Detroit area that talks about organizing. We've covered a couple of his articles too. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. So Otto writes that despite the ceasefire implemented in October, Israel is still committing genocide in Gaza and moving ahead with its plans to ethnically cleanse and occupy the Strip and the West Bank. The movement for Palestine must respond. Look at those piles of rubble. Those were people's homes. Those were apartment buildings. Those were stores. That was life. Israel's genocide, let me make this a little bigger, against Palestine has continued unabated since the ceasefire, quote unquote, implemented on October 10th. In the past 2 months, Israeli airstrikes and gunfire have killed nearly 400 people, an average of nearly 5 per day, and injured nearly 1,000 in the Gaza Strip. And we all know that their hospital facilities are worn down and stressed out. All told, officials in Gaza say that the Zionist state has committed around 800 ceasefire violations, threatening to derail the second phase of the deal, which was Netanyahu's plan the entire time. In addition to the continued bombing campaigns, Israel is also preventing much-needed aid from reaching Palestinians. The number of aid trucks is far below the terms agreed to in the ceasefire, let alone enough to rebuild the enclave. Again, part of the plan. Israel's genocidal campaign has destroyed or damaged over 80% of all buildings, ruined 95% of farmlands, and decimated sanitation systems. As a result of this destruction, at least 12 people have been killed during heavy rains that have collapsed more houses, and also freezing in tents. Israel is also moving full steam ahead on its plan to annex the Strip. Although the ceasefire stipulates that Israeli forces are meant to withdraw from Gaza, the Zionist state has continued to keep troops in the Strip, retaining control of 58% of the territory. Last I checked, that was more than half. Israel is also attempting to make the new occupation permanent. Chief of the General Staff of the IOF has said that the yellow line, which currently marks the IOF's limits, is the new border line. So they just stole all that land. And by the way, they just moved the line inward even further. That's the yellow line. So literally, right from the Rafah gate, the Rafah crossing, notice that there's a big space there, and there's a big space to the north too, and there's a space to the west. They literally have cut it off all around. And anywhere that wildlife used to potentially grow has been cut off and decimated. Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign isn't limited to Gaza, as we've also been talking about repeatedly and at length. Palestinians in the West Bank are experiencing the highest level of violence since the 1967 start of the occupation. Since October of 2023, more than 1,000 have been killed, including 277 this year alone. Again, there's no Hamas in the West Bank. They just want to steal the territory. In addition to deadly shootings, Palestinians in the West Bank are exposed to raids, beatings, arbitrary arrest, and prison torture, in addition to having their land stolen and their houses boarded. This situation makes clear that this is a ceasefire in name only, and Israel will not stop committing genocide and ethnically cleansing Palestinians, whether in Gaza or in the West Bank. U.S. imperialism, particularly President Trump's colonial 20-point quote-unquote peace plan, bullshit, cannot guarantee a ceasefire nor protect Palestinians. We also cannot rely on European countries, which, just like the U.S., continue to provide aid to Israel, like Germany, which has resumed armed shipments, even though that is aiding in genocide and a war crime in itself. For their part, the regimes of the countries in the region, including Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Turkey, have also been complicit in the genocide and backed Trump's plan, despite popular demonstrations against Israel. Those are all part of the Abraham Accords, I believe. For instance, the Sisi government in Egypt has helped enforce the Rafah border closure and keep Gaza isolated, all while deporting activists attempting to break the siege of Gaza. They are also doing that because they don't want 500,000 or more Palestinians coming into Egypt and living there as refugees. They can't really handle that influx of people. Instead, the Palestine movement across the world must return, showing its full solidarity with people in Gaza and the West Bank. We've seen powerful demonstrations of this force across the world in recent years, like the hundreds of thousands who've marched in cities across Europe, the youth occupations in both Europe and the United States, and the global Samud flotilla. Key to this fight is the labor movement. Workers make the economy run, and they can grind the gears of imperialism like armed shipments to a halt. Workers in Italy recently showed the way forward, going on strike to protest the genocide. Until the genocidal state of Israel and its imperialist accomplices are defeated, the global working class cannot stop fighting for Palestinian liberation. Also, Oakland, California. I know they're also refusing to load ships that have arms going to Israel. Okay. So, in a very similar vein, Dave DeCamp over at Anti-War, also Indie Media Award honorees, both as the journalist and the outlet. Israel has killed over 400 Palestinians in Gaza since Trump-backed ceasefire went into effect. So again, they update that number. Again, 401 Palestinians and 1,108 wounded since the ceasefire was supposed to go into effect. Remember what Rafat al-Arir said, ceasefire means that everyone ceases and Israel fires. Health Ministry statement came a day after the Israeli military bombed a school sheltering displaced Palestinians in Gaza City's Tufa neighborhood. Israeli shelling hit the school when families were gathered there to celebrate a wedding, and the attack killed 6 people, including a 4-month-old baby and his father, because fuck Israel. Israel continued launching attacks in Gaza on Sunday, killing at least 3 people in Gaza City's Shujaya neighborhood, according to the Palestinian news agency Wafa. If confirmed by the health ministry, it would bring the total number of people killed during the so-called ceasefire to 404. 3 women were also killed in Gaza on Sunday when a building damaged by Israel's bombing campaign collapsed in Gaza City's Sheikh Radwan neighborhood, which has become a common occurrence due to strong winds amid harsh weather. The other 2 Palestinians were missing under rubble after the building collapse, again according to Wafa. 5 babies, according to them, have also died due to cold, as many families are living in flimsy tents that were flooded in recent heavy rain. The U.S. and Israel, again, are not allowing reconstruction to take place in the Hamas-controlled side of Gaza, where virtually all civilians are living, and Israel has maintained restrictions on aid entering the Strip. And remember, if they cross the yellow line, they're treated as if they are combatants and killed. So they can only live in this area where no aid is allowed, where they're not allowed to rebuild, where they're not allowed to have warmth, where they're not allowed to have tents. Children are losing their lives because they lack the most basic items for survival. Babies are arriving to the hospital cold with near-death vital signs. Even our best efforts are not nearly enough. They say the war has ended, but people are still having to fight for their lives. Doctors Without Borders also called for Israel to lift all restrictions on aid entering Gaza. Of course, as Gaza is battered by heavy rains and storms, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians continue to struggle in flooded and broken makeshift tents. MSF calls on Israeli authorities to urgently allow a massive scale-up of aid into the Strip. But that would actually expose what Israel's been doing the whole time, and actual people from the West would be able to see it and photograph it and document it and tell everyone else, and they would rather that not happen. Thank you very much. Because fuck Israel. Next. God, this woman deserves a Nobel Prize herself. Asal Rod, professor, writer. She writes over at New Arab, fellow at the Arab Center. Okay. She has been one of the strongest advocates for Miss Rachel. She's the headline fixer, I call her. She likes to remind corporate news outlets at how much they're whitewashing genocide. So Miss Rachel reminds people that Palestinian children have human rights. Stop violating them. They have the right to education. Okay. She calls out to me, teacher, I fill up the water and come back quickly. How Palestinian children in Gaza are robbed of their right to education. There was also a documentary about Hind Rajab that came out, and I saw the IDF actually put a t-shirt on her of their own, acting like Hamas was the ones that killed Hind. Absolute disgrace gaslighting. 355 bullets from IDF soldiers, IDF cowards, with the rest of her family and medics. We're still relying on Miss Rachel to advocate for the rights of Palestinian children because world leaders refuse to do so. Follow Asal Rod over on Twitter or over on Substack if you can. If you're not already, what are you doing? All right, here we go. The Associated Press, and we talked about West Bank earlier. How about Israel's cabinet approving a proposal for 19 new settlements in the occupied West Bank? And Smotrich is claiming that Netanyahu was the one insisting, but we all know that all of them are down with it and have been fighting for it and pushing for it. They're just pushing bullshit. Fuck Israel for that. Next, I had a question about how this guy happened to get in. Israel, for whatever reason, must have been shamed into allowing a Catholic cardinal from the Vatican, okay, Cardinal Pizzaballa, which is a great name for an Italian Catholic, Pizzaballa. Displaced Christian children, descendants of one of the very oldest Christian communities, sing carols to welcome Cardinal Pizzaballa to Gaza yesterday to visit one of the few Catholic churches that are still remaining. Amazing. That they had all these Santa hats even. They must have brought them in to see how clean they are. Because after 2 years of bombing, you know that there's nowhere to get clean Santa hats in Palestine. Okay. More about Pizzaballa. Ihab Hassan says, Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, visits the Holy Family Catholic Parish in Gaza City ahead of Christmas and will lead the Christmas Mass there. An extraordinary cardinal. So a little bit of light, a little bit of positivity, a little bit of happiness. And look at this scene, which is, again, horrific. Cardinal, again, Pizzaballa, goes to different displacement camps in Gaza City. This looks like it's AI. This looks like ChatGPT. Could you imagine? Look at these. We are causing this. Children to have to live in tents on beaches like Bedouins. And there's this cardinal blessing the area for whatever that's worth. At least he's trying. Then there's this motherfucker, Jonathan Greenblatt. And I'm not a big fan of InfoLib News or Chris Menahan, but when they call it out, and they call it out, they call it out. This is unbelievable. This is an admission by Jonathan Greenblatt, head of the ADL. The 7 largest Jewish communities on Earth hold bi-weekly Zoom meetings organized by the ADL to share tips and draft legislation that might work in other countries to advance their people's agenda. What people is that? This is a Zionist thing, not a Jewish thing. We have meetings that are some off the record, some on the record, with world leaders, in which we share our community's concerns and call for action. But they don't control the media or anything. Don't accuse them of controlling the media or politics or anything else.
Now, just last week, leaders of the world's 7 largest Jewish communities convened in Australia as part of the 2025 J7 Summit. This is a summit organized by ADL as part of the J7 Task Force to combat anti-Semitism, a convening of representative bodies of the largest Jewish communities on Earth.
So the J7, as we said, is comprised of the 7 largest diaspora communities. We meet every other week via Zoom to share information, to share best practices. We share what worked for our communities, what hasn't worked, what might work elsewhere. We have shared tips or draft legislation that might work in other countries or spoken of different litigation. A lot of what has been very important has been this consultation where we can learn from each other, learn the trends that are coming in, learn the techniques that others have used successfully, and what might be coming our way. Because what happened in Montreal could happen in Melbourne, points. And what happens in New York or London or Paris will make its way to Buenos Aires. That's number one. Number two, we do speak in one voice in certain aspects on key advocacy. So, for example, when we left Australia, our call to action was on the Australian government to move forward the Special Envoy Gillian Siegel's plan on anti-Semitism, which has been stalled for a number of months, to accept it and to implement it.
So we'll false flag in any country where this thing is on the table. The 7 largest diaspora communities went to Australia to show solidarity
publicly with the community, with government leaders in the media, and also make this joint call to action. Finally, we have meetings that are some off the record, some on the record with world leaders in which we share our community's concerns and call for action. So it's both a really important body for consultation and learning from each other, as well as an effective tool when we can come together and speak in one voice.
Coordinating talking points across multiple resources, but they don't control anything and they're not coordinating anything, guys. Don't accuse them of anything like that because they just admitted it openly, but don't accuse them. Fuck Israel. Again, not Jewish communities, Zionist communities. This is specifically to support and defend and fund and censor over Zionism, not Judaism. Judaism is not Zionism. Zionism is not Judaism. More Christian Zionists in the United States than there are Jews worldwide. And there are many Jews that are not Zionists, that do not support Israel, like this one right here, like a couple that are in this chat right here. Now, we've talked about Zionist and specifically IDF infiltration into big tech extensively. How they have hired Unit 8200 people, which is the tech division of the IDF, in just about every social media company and Google and Apple. And well, now, as it turns out, Nvidia, which is now the world's largest company, valued at over $5 trillion, According to Zionism Observer, there are at least 92 Israelis on LinkedIn who listed both Nvidia and Unit 8200. Now, I don't know if those are all active employees of Nvidia, but at least they show a common alumni. Some may be currently working at Nvidia. Some may have worked previously at Nvidia and prior had served in Unit 8200. But this is why. Nvidia is just days away from building Israel's largest tech campus ever. According to Yaakov Kvint, director of the Israeli Land Authority, the deal with the tech giant to build a massive campus in Israel's north will be signed in the next day or so. It'll be something the likes of which has never been seen before in Israel. 160,000 square meters to house approximately 8,000 workers. That's about 30% larger than their Silicon Valley campus. Horrible. This isn't the only investment the world's most valuable company is making in what Dan Senior calls the startup nation. In southern Israel, Nvidia is tripling the size of its R&D center there in Beersheba. In November, they reached 5,000 Israeli employees, making Israel its largest R&D center outside the United States. So, Nvidia is a major proponent, supporter, and advocate for Zionism. Keep that in mind. They're also the ones that are fueling all the data centers and funding all the lobbying on behalf of it. And again, you've got this circular thing with OpenAI and Nvidia and Microsoft and Amazon, where they're all just passing money back and forth and back and forth. Golden Monarch going crazy. And Golden Monarch, to his credit, was talking to me about Jensen Huang like a month or two or longer ago about how he was like a staunch Zionist. And it doesn't really surprise me because of all the tech people that are coming out of Israel. Like, that's what they're cheaper and they're sustaining and growing that industry, not realizing that they're letting the fox into the fucking hen house. This will all be turned against them in the end. Fuck Israel. And fuck Nvidia. Next. Now, this was from back in November. And I've talked before about the infiltration that Israel and Israeli media and the campaign that they had set forth to infiltrate American media and specific American groups that were being targeted. So this is an article in the Palestine News Network website, english.pnn.ps. I've never heard of Palestine News Network before this. They were shared in the Israel-Palestine News website. From churches to ChatGPT, Israeli contracts worth millions aim to influence U.S. public opinion. And again, I know I've talked about a lot of these before, but I wanted to bring this one because this is like a nice little rehash overview summary of all of the, not all of, but a lot of the efforts that have happened to coordinate Hezbollah propaganda. All right. Now, this is why I brought this also. The projects are funded through the German company, Havas Media. This is to give Israel a layer of disconnect. Well, it's not us, it's Havas. Who hired Havas to do the propaganda? Havas serves as the executive intermediary. The documents indicate that Israel has paid over $100 million through this channel since 2018 already to promote and finance media campaigns in the U.S. Now they've targeted $750 million for 2026, a 5x. The largest of these contracts was signed in August with Clock Tower X, which is owned by Brad Parscale that ran the Trump digital campaign for 2016 and 2020. Okay, the $6 million 4-month deal provides strategic consulting and planning and the execution of a comprehensive campaign in the U.S. to combat anti-Semitism, They're not combating anti-Semitism. The campaign is to conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. According to contract details filed with the US DOJ, the company must produce at least 100 core materials per month, including videos, audio clips, designs, and texts, along with 5,000 derivative versions monthly, which they use AI for, aiming for 50 million monthly views. About 80% of the content targets young Americans on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and I would say 75% of those views are paid bot AI slop in order to influence the other people and make it seem like they're much larger than they are, allegedly. Focusing on conservative church audiences, which again we've talked about, but Haaretz reported that much of the campaign's messaging is distributed through Salem Media Network, a conservative Christian media conglomerate owning more than 200 radio stations and websites across the U.S., okay, where you have Parscale again appointed this year as their network's chief strategy officer. How convenient. So first, Parscale gets money for this entity, Clock Tower. Then he's getting money through Salem Media Network. All right. Though the focus on Christian audiences is unusual, no, it's not, because of the Christian Zionism element. Surveys by the Pew Research Center between 2022 and 25 show a steep decline in support for Israel among American conservatives. Amazing how blowing up innocent fucking Palestinian kids might do that. Negative opinions rose from 42% in 2022 to 53% this year, including among Republicans under 50. Again, genocide will have that effect on a population, especially the ones that are on TikTok that are paying attention and don't watch the evening news where they whitewash it and dismiss it or omit it completely. Among young Democrats, negative views of Israel climbed to 71%. Again, they don't like murdering kids, up from 62% 3 years ago, reflecting a widening divide in attitudes towards Israel, even with the traditionally pro-Israel conservative base. Conservatives don't like murdering babies either, motherfuckers. A 2024 report by Tel Aviv University's Center for the Study of the United States identified a similar trend among young evangelicals who've become more critical of Israel, a shift attributed to images of destruction in Gaza and the waning impact of traditional Israeli PR. You mean Hezbollah lying, bullshit, made up fear porn? You mean that's not working anymore because people see dead bodies every day and dead babies every day and starving children every day and freezing children every day and soggy tents and flooded out stuff where they have no access to toilets or sewage or running water or electricity? Hunting worshipers inside churches. Okay, but not like you would think. They're geo-targeting people. Another campaign financed by Israel's foreign ministry was conducted through Show Faith by Works, owned by Republican consultant and evangelical activist Chad Schnitzker. I have to be careful there. With a budget exceeding $3 million, again, a drop in the bucket for these motherfuckers, the campaign sought to raise Christian awareness against what it termed Palestinian support for terrorism. There has been no terrorism of anywhere since October 7th, 2023, and that wasn't even terrorism because the definition of you cannot commit an act of terror in an area where you are imprisoned already, where the guards were pulled off the wall that morning and it was a forced intelligence failure where the IDF murdered hundreds of Israeli citizens that day. But again, terrorism. Focusing largely on targeting churches and Christian organizations in the Western U.S. Like Utah, for example, like where Charlie Kirk was killed. Why? Because Charlie Kirk allegedly was starting to question Israel, at least a slight bit amount, apparently. I don't know how much. He had said some horrible things about Palestinian people. He had said some horrible things about other people. But there were a group of right-wing Christians that were starting to question, why are we supporting Israel blindly? Documents show the use of, like I said, geofencing technology, setting precise digital perimeters around churches and Christian colleges in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado to track worshipers and later direct ads to them. Their target audience was estimated at 8 million churchgoers and 4 million Christian students, which means my guess is that they did this using an app, which then they made people allow location targeting to be enabled, not realizing who was actually getting access to that data, and the fact that they would then be served ads later on based on the fact that they went to a church and installed that fucking app. But the FTC will have nothing to say about that. I remember I was in the car business and we heard about geo-targeting years ago. So that, like, if I worked at a car dealership, I could literally geofence my competitor's dealership and serve a coupon via text message to one of the somebodies that showed up within a certain radius of their store. Frightening shit. And this was a decade ago. Despite privacy concerns, the Israeli Foreign Ministry told Haaretz that claims about geofencing or influencer payments were false and part of a coordinated disinformation campaign against Israel. No, they never do that. They also did it at Charlie Kirk's funeral, by the way. The ministry said that its activities so far were limited to exhibitions and digital installations showing the atrocities of October 7th. So people who are already primed to be propagandized, you then further propagandized because you were lying about what happened on October 7th to begin with. There were no rapes. You didn't talk about the IDF shooting rocket fire at people and tank fire at people, and you certainly are still trying to talk about beheaded babies. Insane. Then you have the Hollywood celebrities, and INN News covered this a couple of weeks ago. Drafts of the campaign listed potential celebrity partners such as Chris Pratt and Jon Voight and Tim Tebow and Steph Curry, though it remains unclear whether they were actually contacted. They were targeted. Plans also included developing educational materials for pastors and organizing a traveling VR exhibition called the October 7th Experience to be displayed in churches and universities. And they brought all those pastors to Israel 2 weeks ago to start this, to lay that groundwork, I guarantee. Then we have this week, they also announced further influencing ChatGPT. A notable clause in the Clock Tower X contract refers to search and language operation, aimed not only at shaping traditional search engine results, but also at influencing conversational outputs on ChatGPT and AI platforms such as Claude by steering language pathways related to Israel. So now they're feeding Hasbara to the slop, to the AI, so that when AI looks to give you like the median of all data and a total sample set, it will be forced to include that slop. According to Haaretz, this marks the first known public attempt by a state to influence AI chat systems and shape their political narratives. Then we've got Project Esther, which I know Dissent in Bloom also talked about extensively. Influencer-based messaging. In a related move, all right, the Israeli government signed another contract with Bridges Partners, owned by consultants Yair Levy and Uri Steinberg, both former officials in Israel's tourism ministry. They only feed their own. Valued at around $1 million, the deal aims to enhance cultural exchange between the U.S. and Israel through influencer-driven content. They're basically buying off content creators. The initiative, again titled the Esther Project, employs up to 20 influencers to post up to 30 pieces of content monthly across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. Are these the $7,000 posts? Sounds like it, from fees ranging from several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on how big a platform that you have. The documents mention that one of the beneficiaries is a media advisor who previously worked with Netanyahu and the families of Israeli hostages. Remember that all the hostages have been returned, at least the living ones. There have been several that are still under rubble that they can't get to.
Who are these people?
Thank you to whoever just hooked us up there. Oz the Boomer, thank you, brother. I don't know why that thing is slid over there. It shouldn't be. Slide that over here and fix that so that it comes down the right way. All right. Then we have their tech war room, which again, they're bragging about this stuff. But it's anti-Semitic to accuse them of coordinating this stuff, right? Of influence campaigns. According to Haaretz, these contracts form part of a broader Israeli strategy to deploy AI in influence operations. Internal documents reveal a plan named Project Max, developed under the Voices of Israel division of the Diaspora Affairs Ministry. Literally, they have a propaganda division of their government aimed at combating delegitimization of Israel through AI and big data analytics. The noticers are noticing, and we can't allow that, so we have to counter that with $750 million of propaganda. The plan envisions a technological war room equipped with monitoring, publishing, and activation systems, combining human influencers and automated bots programmed to generate pro-Israel propaganda. Holy shit. Haaretz noted that earlier attempts to launch such bots suffered technical failures that produced awkward or contradictory content. I remember we covered one of those AI bots that turned on Israel at one point, but said that current efforts to reflect a more sophisticated digital propaganda strategy integrating AI tools, influencers, and sponsored media campaigns, douchebags like Tim Pool and Batya Unger-Sargon and other larger platform people like Patrick Bet-David. Fuck all these propagandist douchebag people. All right. And finally, I've got one other thing. Dealing with the ChatGPT, Ryan Rosbiani, and you should be following him if you're not on Twitter. Israel signs a $6 million training contract for ChatGPT to be even more pro-Israel because they weren't already. A coordinated influence campaign is now targeting AI outputs and online conversations about Gaza. A U.S. firm was hired, as we said, to shape GPT-style responses and digital framing in Israel's favor, moving beyond ads and into answers. At least 80% of the material is tailored for Gen Z across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and social. Again, we talked about Parscale is running this. The campaign is built to generate 50 million impressions every month in the U.S. They don't even necessarily care who it's influencing. They want to be able to claim that number because then it's influencing somebody because of the volume. They don't even care. Contract language explicitly calls for delivering GPT framing results. As I had pointed out from inside that article there, this isn't messaging, it's narrative control built into AI. It was always Chat GIPTI, Generative Israel Propaganda Text Interface. And I can't go too far down in the comments or you're going to get something that really is antiseptic. But fuck Netanyahu, fuck Israel, fuck OpenAI, and all these propagandist douchebags. And that's the end of our Fuck Israel segment for the night, fam. We made it. Thank you. Thanks for sticking with me for it. Algorithms are anti-Semitic, apparently. Even though they're mostly programmed by Unit 8200 guys, or at least overseen and influenced after they're programmed by low-cost Indian and other programmers, Chinese and other H-1Bs. Scumbag is my new favorite word, Lady Alex M. It is a fun one to use. Again, thank you to Oz the Boomer for the $5. So tip your streamers if you can. We appreciate that. Oz, you are sneaky, staying up late. And Oz and Shanda did a show Saturday night, which was the last Beauty and the Boomer of the year. We're going to talk about Shanda a little later on tonight. She is at Fred Hutch right now, undergoing treatment. I think she's going to be staying with Amber if they don't bust her out. And we love Shanda. So before we keep going and we get to the Substack story, which I'm still looking forward to doing. Okay, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Like I tell everyone, the ways to do that at INN, and we love all the people on that board. Thank you so much for supporting independent media. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family if you can. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Our website is IndieNewsNow.com. There's a section there to leave a tip via Stripe on the Keep the Media Free. And then over at Substack, you can subscribe monthly or annually at either IndieMediaToday.com or for the network at INNNewsletter.com. We are co-founders of Indie News Network, where there are more than a dozen shows weekly, and I send out a weekly newsletter summarizing and linking to everything that the network has put out throughout the week. Subscribe over at INNNewsletter.com, please. I put a ton of time into that. Okay. Speaking of Substack, and really funny, I'm telling you to subscribe to Substack, and I'm about to dogpile on them. All right. Can I wrench Lady Alex M? I will discuss that with my fellow INN brethren. But there's a lot of people I would like to wrench, but we all just discuss that, and we do that collectively. But I will certainly discuss that with Reef and Colin and Angel and Himbo and Jesse, and we'll decide on that together as a group. Okay. What's going on over at Substack? Well, it's not just Substack, but age verification is now here thanks to the laws that were passed in the UK and now Australia. So what's happening here? Starts out that Hamish McKenzie, back on December 1st, was trying to claim that Substack wasn't a walled garden, and our friend of the show, Michael Ginsberg from Actionable Truth and Actions, we're going to get to him in a minute, was refuting that to state that Substack overall may not be, but Notes absolutely is a walled garden. Okay, the smart notifications option, which is enabled now by default for those with an existing account on Substack that install the app on their phones, mean that subscribers don't always get an email when a new post is published. That was happening over the summer to Fred Edward. We realized that as of July 5th, he had stopped getting emails because he installed the app on his phone, and by default, the app delivers new posts only to the inbox in the app and not via email. And I have suspicions as to why that is. Michael also says that he can say from personal experience that while the content export works quite well, there is a fair bit of fiddling to do before it looks exactly the same on something like Ghost or WordPress, and that elements like uploaded videos and audio in the body of a post or embedded tweets or embedded notes don't transfer. And then finally, there is this small matter, which unfortunately Substack has chosen to comply with, but to Substack's credit, he can say that any centralized platform is likely to have to do the same, which is now that they are requiring everyone that gets online in Australia to submit to age verification. Turn on your FaceTime camera and biometrically prove that it's you using a third-party company, which, by the way, is based in Israel. They don't want you to know that, but apparently that's the case. Follow The Last American Vagabond. He's been reporting on that. Shout out to Ryan for that. All right. Hamish's response, and I'm impressed that Michael even got a response out of Hamish, but apparently he pokes the bear enough. He has to defend himself. Notes is a growth engine to help you get subscribers, which you then can export. Smart notifications is opt-in. Sure it is. And lets people receive your posts in their preferred way, except that by default, it's your preferred way. They can revert at any time if they want, and they figure out how, because it's 5 hoops to get through, and you still have their email address regardless, only if they're email subscribed. But if they're just following, you don't get that. And he says, unfortunately, we have to comply with various countries' regulations to be able to operate there, which in some cases is undesirable, but better than the alternative. In all cases, to whatever extent possible, we protect writer and consumer freedoms to the maximum extent. As a platform, they're between a rock and a hard place. Legislation is saying that they now need to require age verification for everybody that comes online. They have to prove that everybody that's there is over 16, which also means, by the way, that you can't really be anonymous because the government really knows who you are, even if your account is anonymous. Frightening. Because Whitney Webb talked about this years ago, that the goal of the World Economic Forum and the superpower brokers and the ownership class was they wanted to eliminate anonymity. They feel like a lot of the trolling and the quote-unquote hate speech is done by people who have the protection of anonymity. As they should, because we're supposed to have free speech in this country still. But they want to eliminate all of that. To continue, Michael thanks Hamish for his reply and says 2 further points. Number 1 is that if Notes is a growth engine to get subscribers, why did you introduce the follow option? We don't even get emails for followers. If this really was about subscriptions and you wanted a half in, half out option, so to speak, you could have set it up whereby followers still do get the emails, but the publisher didn't get access to their email address. Either way, I am yet to see from anyone in Substack management a proper data-backed explanation for justifying the follow feature in a self-described subscription network, which is now turned in yet another social media platform. All right. Fairly sure that smart notifications is on by default for anyone downloading the app, and they even have to then manually change the setting themselves, as I just continued. Even if that's not the case and I'm mistaken, then I apologize unreservedly. So, again, they're just arguing a little bit back and forth, Michael and Hamish going back and forth, reminding people that we read this article on stream, and there were a lot of issues there. And that this censorship caused by the government and forced by Substack has now caused a wave of cancellations of people that no longer want to participate on Substack or pay monthly. Substack CEO Chris Best also penned an op-ed that went in the UK Telegraph on Sunday criticizing the UK Online Safety Act because they want to do the same thing there. And they're now requiring age verification and biometric ID confirmation in order to be able to read an article on Substack. Just to read one, not even to publish, just to read. All right. Vanessa Beeley, Indie Media Award honoree, class of 2022, tagged Indie News Network here. Substack team, the quickest way to kill a platform is to introduce indiscriminate age verification ID demands to actually read posts or to watch videos. She said that she's receiving complaints and unsubs from all over the world. She's told subscribers in Australia can't see any of her posts without providing ID. This is a disgusting invasion of civil liberties and privacy. Are you going to continue to this policy to the detriment of the platform, or will you remove these restrictions? Now, I actually responded to Vanessa here. Yes, here's Kit Clarenberg having to verify my age to read my own DMs sent to my antenna twitching no end. Sent my antenna twitching no end. BetBeat advises to email them. I then responded, Arturo says they have to abide by the laws in other countries. Right? I did respond somewhere in here. I don't know where my response to Vanessa is. Maybe it was to BetBeat. I think I responded to BetBeat. Yep. Here we go. This is about compliance with the new child safety online laws passed in Australia recently, and likely will also include anti-Semitism at some point, maybe what that Bondi Beach PSYOP massacre was setting up. It sucks to see them bend the knee, but the other alternatives to Substack are to shut down in each country requiring verification, or to take it on and get fined massively for non-compliance, then spend resources to try to fight those fines, which is basically for PR and to keep their international journalists happy in their minds. I don't think they see the writing on the wall of the same thing spreading to the West, though it eventually absolutely will. Don't forget the Substack is funded by Zionist venture capital Andreessen Horowitz, aid to 16Z Capital, and Y Combinator, a major tech incubator. Mark Andreessen is also a extended member of the eBay PayPal mafia. Substack has been catering to mainstream personalities and networks, leaning into amplifying the corporate personalities sent over here to take over the platform. I called this out more than a year ago, and so did Rich Slutsky. And now we've got Barry Weiss running the Free Press, which just was bought out by Skydance, which is the Ellisons, and put her in charge of CBS. All right, Stripe, who runs monetization, CEO Patrick Collison has visited Israel since October 7th, 2023, and is clearly a supporter of theirs. Now, I give major kudos. I talked about Michael Ginsberg earlier. He saw the writing on the wall, and he started preparing for this months ago. He moved his publication to Ghost. He moved his mailing list. He moved his funding. He had his live streams. He had live streams to tell people about it and educate them where they could find him. He talked about it over at Notes. He moved his publication to Ghost. He moved his private community to an app called Community, and using other resources like PeerTube to try to reassemble most of what he built here, including the live streams that he was doing. All right. So Michael shared this article, which details a lot of the nightmare that's going on here. I think I also, Miep had a thing somewhere in here. I think that's after this. There's Miep. No, I think I lost it. Okay. Agent 1301711, right? That's chemtrails.substack.com. I once brought an article of theirs about electric cars, which I thought was fascinating, and emissions. But this one I was really scary. New U.S. identity verification laws and authors hit with chargebacks due to this whole biometric requirement thing. So they start out by saying, I had no intention of publishing anything today because my next article, which comes out tomorrow, but this is so important that it cannot wait. Substack has enacted biometric scans for a large quantity of Australian citizens. Now, Vanessa Beeley claims that this is not happening to all citizens and against all publications either, that it's only targeting specific publications that use specific language against specific entities, possibly. Those who refuse to submit are being locked out of their accounts. This seems illegal, but being that many of the people getting locked out of their accounts are paid subs, meaning they've been cut off from using a service that they paid in advance for and are still being billed for. Kathy Vogan can tell you all about that. She's been paying Twitter for like 2 years for a blue check so they don't lose her longer videos, like featuring Indie Media Award honoree John Pilger, that are exclusively on Twitter, that if she gave up her blue check, those videos might be deleted. Again, here's proof that indeed a paid subscriber says to Agent, I'm looking forward to your new website launch. Substack has introduced facial recognition to log in, and I refuse to do this. My Substack subscriptions have now become redundant because I can't log in. I do want to support you, but not via Substack anymore. Please cancel future payments for my subscription to your account on the 2nd. This proves that they were a paid subscriber monthly. This is now creating complete and total chaos. My subscribers and income are plummeting like never before. Again, remember when I told you that I don't want people to have my income tied to a platform? This is one of the reasons why it continues to go down by the day. Substack decided to make a change to require age verification to read an article, and therefore paid subscribers there are now leaving and canceling But it gets worse. This brings us to the second problem, which is filing chargebacks against Stripe. Agent says, I know a lot of you are locked out of your account and paying for a service you have no way of using unless you submit to a service you don't want, which is insane. But before you file a chargeback with your bank against the payment, please hear me out. As a reader, you may be thinking that I'm crying because someone gave me $5, then decided they want their money back, so they went to their bank and filed a chargeback against the purchase, resulting in the $5 being ripped out of my bank account and returned to them. I assure you this is not the problem, and let me explain the problem to you. This is what creators deal with on a daily basis. It starts with the author being raped. When you pay $5, I only get $3.98 or $4.14 in some cases. Okay? Because Stripe charges 52 cents and then Substack takes 10%, so I only get $3.98 at the end. But even that's not the problem. The problem is the corrupt banking system that charges the author additional fees each time a chargeback is filed. Currently, that fee per chargeback is $15. So that means that not only is the original $5 removed from my account and returned to the subscriber, but an additional $15 is charged to me as a penalty for the reader filing the chargeback. I'm now out $20 to refund $5, even though I never got $5, I only got $3.98. This money enriches the banks. But that's not even where it ends, because let's look at the $50 a year chargeback. Highway robbery. Fuck Stripe. In this case, someone signed up for a yearly membership in October, then got locked out of their account in December. Out of their initial payment of $50, I was paid $43. Again, $6.75, which is Stripe's fee of $1.75, and $5, the 10% fee to Substack. Then, when they filed a dispute, $50 was taken from me, plus the $15 dispute fee, plus the other fees, which leaves me owing the bank $21.75 out of my personal money to refund the $50, which they already took. Fucking insane. Now, if I want to fight the dispute to try to win my money back, like I'm playing roulette, that costs an additional $15, which means I have to pay to get my $50 back to try to get it back, which was never $50 because I only got paid $43. I would have to pay out an additional $36.75 out of my own family's bank account to dispute it. And there's the receipts showing that because they refunded a $50 thing, okay, then they charged $15 to dispute, and then the dispute counter fee was another $15. Stripe is just raking us over the coals. The bank, by the way, almost always sides with its customer, the cardholder, so I found there's very little value in gambling the additional $15. It's literally roulette. It's literally gambling. On my end, it is a lesser loss to dip into my own bank account and pay the bank the robbery fees than to gamble on a $43 victory. Now, let's go back to the Substack disaster. If 300 people file chargebacks against me just in $15 chargeback fees, that alone is $4,500 that I now must gift to Stripe, the bank, for no legitimate reason. This is in addition to the refund to each individual. So let's say those 300 people each paid $5 for a monthly membership. That's another $1,500. And remember, he didn't get the $1,500. Just those two amounts come to $6,000 to refund $1,500 because Substack chose to lock people out of their accounts instead of giving them a chance to close the account and deactivate their subscriptions. These motherfuckers. And guess, by the way, A16Z Andreessen Horowitz is an investor in Stripe as well, and Substack. They double dip. They're making money on both sets of fees. agent is telling you what to do instead. If you're owed a refund because you have no way to use what you're paying for, please respond to this email or reach out to agent directly. Let me know via the email address what the email address on your Substack account is, and give me a few days to get it done for you. Now, let's look at who's running the biometrics program. Like I said, Persona is the name of the company that's being used to identify and verify identities. As you can see, the notice says that the scan will be used to improve Persona's platform in accordance with their privacy policy. If we go to their privacy policy, scroll down the page, we find out they're working with Smile ID. Who's Smile ID? Smile ID is a digital company that is especially active in Africa. That's weird. Here's what their cell phone app looks like. They've already partnered with MasterCard in Africa. And so many more companies, which many of us have never heard of, but still are large, on their privacy policy. Their address is listed as San Francisco, except for one little thing. That's where the address brings us. Interesting. Which is a shared office space called Trellis. Here you can pay monthly for a standard desk or a deluxe desk, which will run you around $375 a month, depending on which plan you choose. It's a virtual office. It's a shell. So this company, who's running biometrics for Substack, is working out of a shared office desk in San Francisco? Now let's get back to Smile ID, which is a partner of Persona. On the Smile ID site, in their privacy section, we learn that they enable third-party tracking mechanisms to collect information. They say, quote, third parties such as Facebook may use personal information deposited in our app to target online ads to persons who may have used our app. So wait a minute. Now, by getting facial recognition authentication for Substack, Facebook is going to get access to your likeness so that they can target you for fucking for ads? So they not only collect our biometric data, they install trackers and sell or gift our info so we can be spammed with ads and who knows what else. By the way, if you continue to read the lengthy policy, it says, quote, persons who may wish to access, correct, or delete the personal information we have on file may contact us at compliance@usesmileid.com. Smile ID has four addresses listed. Weird, but not the United States, Nigeria, the UK, South Africa, and Kenya. The Nigeria address brings us to a desk. The UK address brings us to another shared office space, this time in the station house. The South Africa address brings us to an office building, and the Kenya address takes us to a building in which a banking tech company called Verto resides. I assume this is it? And I also assume if I dug for a while, I would probably be able to connect Smile ID to the banking company. All of this is weird, right? Like, there isn't any building with a big sign on the door that says Smile ID or Persona where people can speak to someone. There isn't even a closed door building with a company logo on it that identifies the business that works within. Yet, their tech is being forced upon us. We're being basically extorted into giving them our biometric data if we want to use what we've already paid for and are still paying for. And we now know some of what happens to the data after they collect it, none of which is okay with us. And all of this is not limited, by the way, to Africa and Australia. In the US, Texas, Utah, and Louisiana have just passed verification laws requiring cell phone apps to verify ages. Here's an email an associate received just the other day from the Google Play Store. Apple sent out the same thing. The bottom line is, if you wish to continue using cell phone apps, you will be forced to submit. With that being said, shadowbanlibrary.com opens in 12 days. His partner, Medicine Girl, and he have listened to feedback and have decided they will incorporate blogging into their site. We'll be able to access their free articles for free and their paid sub-exclusives as paid sub-exclusives. Additionally, there'll be much more value for the dollar because they finally have control over the platform, so the options are nearly limitless. They're making an exit. You can take the below survey, really appreciate it. Okay. Light and dark themes. Right now, I have Shadowban Library set up as a dark theme. What would you like? All right, join the WhatsApp group. I don't know if I would join a WhatsApp group, honestly. That's Zuckerberg, too. I would go with either a Signal or Telegram group. He says, I only post on WhatsApp once a day, so you don't have to worry about being harassed all day. Support independent media. Also, this bombshell article, which is the final chapter of the Kosher series, talking about the kosher mafia, right, leading to unexpected places. So support that too. All right. Again, not always a reader or a subscriber to this publication, but this is alarming, beyond alarming. And Substack is using a shady company that has front offices in co-working spaces to verify the identity of its paying subscribers. That is a recipe for disaster. Michael Ginsburg called this out December 11th, which was the day after age verification went into place in Australia. Again, actionable truths and actions, and I will link to his website. All right. The people who run this platform have spoken. Their position is crystal clear, and they now have clearly made substantial steps towards implementing it. Michael has also made his position crystal clear, and it is unwavering, unflinching, uncompromising, and not open to any negotiations or debate. This is his final note that he publishes on Substack. Furthermore, there will be no further live streams and obviously no further content of any kind published on his Substack. Existing content will be deleted as the final tweaks are completed on the content that's been copied across to his own website. His time on this platform has now come to an end. If you want to keep hearing from him, it's time to get off the fence and sign up to his non-Substack mailing list at sendfox.com. And he's laying this out here. This is a 5-minute video where he promised that he was going to do this.
Okay, punish those platforms. What do I mean by punish? Stop using them. Abandon them. Just don't, right? You need to understand. So all these digital platforms, so Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, right? Their revenue comes from advertising, right? So they get their money from advertisers. Now, advertisers will only be interested in advertising if there's eyeballs, right? If there's people that will see those ads, right? If people start living on mass, right? If any country where this legislation comes in and a platform chooses to comply, boom, just poof, disappears from that platform, gone, right? That may make those platforms listen. Okay? That will be a lot more effective than using a VPN because that means that you still stay on the platform, right? I mean, they haven't lost your eyeballs for that matter. Like the advertisers are still there. The reachable market is the same. Nothing has changed, right? So this is what needs to be done. And I guess here's an example, right? Here's an example that's before the pandemic, but not much before the pandemic. There was a thing in Australia, right, where the government wanted to force Facebook to pay news publishers, so like legacy media, right, for the fact that basically they share their basically TV channels, newspapers, they put their content on Facebook and people consume it through that. And they're not getting paid for that, right? I mean, That was the argument. And basically Facebook as the platform should be paying the news publishers for putting the content on Facebook, right? You can argue whether that makes sense or not. It doesn't make sense. But Facebook responded, and that was in Australia. And Facebook responded very, very simply and said, come on, guys. You want to play this game? I mean, without us, those news publishers are not going to get any traffic at all. They're not going to get anything, right? Like they rely on us for that. Okay, you want to play games? Let's fine. Boom, all news content gone from the platform. Nothing. Like nobody, like none of the publishers, like legacy media, TV channels, newspapers, nobody can put their content on the platform. Okay, and that's it. See you later. No more news on Facebook for Australians. Now, do you know what happened? 10 days later, right, the government capitulated because the news publishers started crying out, right? And this is what, and you watch the
So that what Michael is trying to say here again, and go watch this video. And I wanted to share Michael's new website was again actionabletruth.media. All right, and he has set up a Ghost website, self-hosted using Ghost, which is apparently free to do. And he's not using Ghost for email, but he's using SendFox, which I guess is either less expensive or also free, and also self-hosted. He has really taken the reins, and I give him a ton of credit for taking these steps painstakingly over a course of months. He begged me to do the same thing, honestly, and I've got a ton invested in Substack. I don't like it. When they require my age verification, I will likely have to start the process of doing the same thing, but I will not have had the luxury of using the Substack platform to educate and warn my audience beforehand the way that he used this for months to tell them, hey, this was coming, so that the day it came and they turned the lights off, he could manually make his exit voluntarily. A lot of credit to Michael for that. Give him a follow. I actually became a paid subscriber of his community today because I'm a believer in independent media, in giving the finger to these big platforms, and in not allowing them to use shady companies to verify digital ID, to verify ID biometrically, and who knows where that biometric data is going to end up. Fuck that. One other thing, again, UK lawmakers are proposing mandatory on-device surveillance and VPN age verification. And this was, again, from 10 days ago, less than 10 days ago, Reclaim the Net. This link will also be in the Substack post after the live stream's over. So that's what Substack's up to. And I knew I was going to run a little long. Thank you for sticking with me on that. Let me go here before I ask you to support independent media. What does everybody think of that? Like, holy crap. Did you know about all this age verification? Yeah, fuck cell phones up and down the street. You know, it's funny because, what's her name? Amazing Polly has been trying to tell people to get rid of your smartphone. That a lot of this stuff is dependent on people having smartphones. And if people don't have them, then it makes it difficult for them to implement digital money and digital ID and everything else. But it becomes incredibly prohibitive to participate in society if you don't. Right? So it's a matter of, how far do you want to go? How extreme are you going to get? Is Tim Pool on Substack? I don't know, and I don't want to know. My guess is probably at some point. Most people have a Substack. All right. Descent in Bloom. I had someone file a chargeback, and I fought her ass and won. If she would have asked, I would have refunded her, but she didn't. Can't they just build needles into our phones so that they can take a blood test? That's coming. But maybe not. Oh, God. Throwing up child. Sorry to hear that. Descent in Bloom. Yeah, got to clean that up. Right. I'm just going through the comments. Lady Alex M. Thank you for hanging out. I see you went to bed already. Who else? Oh, Purple, by the way. Alabama John said he wants to speak to you right now. He's also live on Rumble. Come over when you're free. Unfortunately, when this is over, I have stuff to do. I've got to edit down the stream because with the kids being home from Christmas break now, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and I need to get my clips made, uploaded, and scheduled for throughout the week. And I also need to make the Fuck Israel segment so that I can make the December stream for Thursday of all of those clips. So that needs to be made. But I really appreciate the invite. Send me a link to Alabama John's page. I've never heard of him. DM me on Twitter at IndLeftNews. Reach out to me. I'm interested in having a conversation. I don't know if this is about censorship, about what Substack's doing, age verification, fuck Israel, ICE. I'm not sure, but always happy to talk to someone over on the Rumble community. Again, actionabletruth.media. I just clicked the link by accident, but there it is. Put it up. That's Michael Ginsberg's new website, where, again, we became paid subscribers today. INN is a big supporter of going independent and sticking your thumb in the eye of the big platforms. Yeah, see, this is how they get you. Descent in Bloom. Smartphone connects to your heart monitoring device. So that's how they get everyone. Love you, Sean the Accord Lord. Thank you, too. I still have a lightning round to get to. And it's going to probably be about 20 minutes. Okay, so let's do that. Before we get started, let me request that everybody support independent media. The ways to do that, Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network using friends and family, patreon.com/Indie News Network, at IndieNewsNow.com. That's our website, self-hosted with a Stripe plugin, at IndieMediaToday.com for an annual or a monthly basis, and over at INNNewsletter.com for the network as well. Stickfinger Man, where did he go? Stickfinger Man is right over there. What do you mean? Max Sarjay, good to see you, brother. Okay, so real quick, let's get to the lightning round, and we'll do GoFundMe's, and we'll get out of here. I'll wish everyone Merry Christmas. Okay, first, oh shit, propaganda. How to spot propaganda. We talked about that last week, and I wanted to bring a little bit of a follow-up to this because I noticed. Let me start it off this way. Let me pull this one in first. Derek Bros shared something on his on his Substack, a video that he had done about Ask Jeffrey, and it was a drop site news article that he was sharing, talking about Epstein and how Epstein was actually running Wexner's pro-Israel philanthropy, where they had claimed that that wasn't the case, and it was an absolute lie. Now, I quoted and replied to Derek Bros. By the way, follow Derek. He's great. Sorry to rant in your comments here, but why does it seemingly always have to be drop site, a.k.a. The Intercept, rebranded on Substack, or a specific handful of people and outlets reporting stories like this? It's really frustrating and suspicious that they're the ones that always get the scoop. I recapped their successful rebrand last October as part of a segment for INN, which was titled Legacy Media Masters Independence are Starting a Substack. Why? Talking about Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill, co-founders of DropSite. Scahill was a founder of The Intercept, frequent guest on corporate TV like Bill Maher. Ryan Grimm, AOC's biographer. Also worked for Breaking Points. Don't forget, they're still connected in some way to Pierre Omidyar. All right, because Pierre still has influence on the board and funding for The Intercept, which has influence and funding over DropSite. It's remarkable how they always seem to be among the few and privileged Intercept alumni who get to break big stories. Throw in Mehdi Hassan and his new outlet, Zatio, into this mix, and add in the guy who seems to get all the exclusives on the PSYOP manifestos, Ken Klippendouche. All worked for The Intercept with a beyond dodgy past of screwing over whistleblowers and having close ties to the intel community. I'm not disputing the validity of the information here. I'm questioning the depth of the relationship to the intelligence community. I suspect it goes much deeper than most would believe. That would make them somewhere close to, if not full on, intelligence assets. Remember what Stockwell had said about how this all works years ago. Most of the time, they're feeding accurate info to seed credibility. But occasionally, when necessary, those are the vessels that end up pushing narrative misinformation and propaganda, because they built the credibility over time that when it goes through, people will believe them. This calls back, this is a post I saw on Twitter. Senator Frank Church and longtime CBS producer Stig Mickelson discussed the CIA's routine use of planted stories and friendly reporters throughout the 50s and 60s. This is Operation Mockingbird. Mockingbird media never went away. CIA Director Bill Colby appears a few times in this segment, not to deny the allegations, but to tell the Church Committee that he wants to discuss it away from the cameras. Check this out. 3 minutes and 13 seconds from the 1970s.
It was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them. We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you named the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided. I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about
it. Okay. So they didn't answer the question, but we now know years later that there absolutely were people on CIA's payroll that were co-opted and that were also members of the media that were used as vessels to disseminate misinformation and false stories. So that's our first item. The next one, and I mentioned it early on when we first started, is that you can see that what's happening from the Trump administration, we talked about this last year, was that there will be a buildup of the military preparing for war with China in 2027. And they've been telling the heads of the military to be prepared for war with China beginning in 2027. And all of this activity that we are seeing, and I actually had a tweet from somebody, I didn't bring it, that said that his son was in the military and that his commander was telling him that what they're making preparations for is war with China for 2027. And then I saw these two news stories and I thought that they dovetailed into that narrative, both out of Indie Media Award honoree Dave DeCamp from Indie Media Award honoree antiwar.com, who's doing a fundraising drive of their own year-end 501c3, completely tax-deductible, support independent media like Anti-War. Philippines to get up to $3.5 billion in U.S. military aid. This aid was tucked into the NDAA and is meant to be distributed over the next 5 years. Now remember, we give Israel $3 billion a year. But the Philippines is in the Pacific. And why are we giving them this kind of money? Well, I think part of it is that we're buying them off. Part of it is that we are arming up in preparation. The $901 billion 2026 NDAA signed by President Trump last week includes up to $3.5 billion in military aid for the Philippines as the U.S. continues to build up its forces and allies in the Asia-Pacific to prepare for a potential future war with China. Aid from Manila includes $500 million in foreign military financing, State Department program that provides foreign governments with funds to purchase U.S. weapons to be distributed over the next 5 years. We're giving them the money to buy our private contractors' weapons. Why? They don't have the money? No, because they wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't spend it on this shit. They don't want it. But if we're going to give it to them, give them the money to buy it from our people, well, they'll be happy to spend that. This bipartisan bill will significantly increase U.S. security assistance to the Philippines and profoundly strengthen and modernize the defense and deterrence capabilities of our alliance. Tim Kaine, again, Democrat, and Bill Hagerty. This is a bipartisan fucking. Said in a joint statement on the inclusion of the $3 and $2.5 billion for Manila alone in the 2026 NDAA. I thought it was $3.5. Maybe there's another billion somewhere else. There it is. The NDAA also includes an offer to the Philippines of a $1 billion loan repayable over 17 years. We're basically giving you the money to then pay us back with also. The significant boost in U.S. military aid for the Philippines comes amid growing tensions in the South China Sea between Manila and Beijing over disputed rocks and reefs, an area where the U.S. is deeply involved, frequently sails warships, and conducts military drills. And no, not the reef that's a member of this network. They're not fighting over him. Since the Trump administration, first Trump admin, the U.S. has openly stated that the U.S.-Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty applies to attacks on Philippine vessels in the South China Sea, meaning that the U.S. is committing to going to war if the maritime dispute between China and the Philippines turns hot. That's like Big Brother. I got my military big brother, the U.S., behind me now. The U.S. frequently reaffirms its commitment following incidents in the South China Sea between Chinese and Philippine boats. Could you imagine if China got involved and decided that they were going to back Venezuela, for example? And if anybody attacked a Venezuelan ship, then they'd have to deal with the Chinese military? Imagine what would happen if that had happened here. The U.S. condemns China's October 12th ramming and water cannoning of a Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources vessel close to Thitu Island in the South China Sea. We stand with our Philippine allies as they confront China's dangerous actions, forget what we do, which undermine regional stability. Again, forget what we do. The U.S. reaffirms of Article 4 of the 1951 Treaty, Mutual Defense Treaty, which extends to armed attacks on Philippine armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft, including those of its Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea. They're rewriting the rules. They're just deciding to apply it. All right. Then we've got not just Philippines, but Taiwan. $11 billion in arms sales for Taiwan. Again, out of Dave DeCamp, antiwar.com. One more. The State Department Wednesday approved a series of arms deals for Taiwan worth more than $11 billion, including multiple types of weapon, missile systems and munitions, an announcement that China has strongly condemned. Naturally, you're selling their... technically, we are still one China policy, right? Taiwan is part of China. We shouldn't even be allowed to sell them to them without China's permission. But we treat Taiwan as a sovereign nation, even though it's not. If the sales aren't blocked by Congress, which is unlikely to happen since there's virtually no opposition to arming Taiwan in Washington, they would exceed the $8.4 billion in arms sold to Taiwan during the entire Biden admin. According to the Pentagon's DSCA, all right, the arms deals include a total of 8 sales, all right, and you can hear about them, including Anduril-made drones and Javelin anti-tank missiles, tube-launched wire-guided missiles, AH-1W helicopter spare and repair parts, Harpoon missile repair, follow-on support, right? In addition, in response to the announcement, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Guo Jiakun said that the move grossly violates the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques. It infringes on China's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. It undermines peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, and it sends a gravely wrong signal to Taiwan independence separatist forces. China firmly opposes and strongly condemns it. Let's see what they do. Guo said that the weapon sales will only push the Taiwan Strait into the danger of military conflict at a faster pace. He added again that the Taiwan question is at the core of China's core interests and is the first red line that must not be crossed in U.S.-China relations, a warning that Chinese officials have delivered to their American counterparts for years. Meanwhile, China's looked the other way as they funded Nvidia and Taiwan Semiconductor to the tune of, now it's worth trillions of dollars. I also wanted to make mention of what's going on in Bolivia. 2 things are happening. Austerity measures have pushed them to the point where they had elected a neolib. Fuel subsidies had long been a point of contention in Bolivia, so I rely on Arturo Dominguez from Decolonized Journalism to tell me what's going on there. I'm not going to read this long article about what's going on in Bolivia, but I also wanted to make note that Ali Vargas pointed out that Bolivia's indefinite general strike against neoliberal austerity measures began today. Mass marches are underway in the cities, and rural workers have blocked all major highways by erecting barricades on roads across their regions. Music to my ears. Shut down the trucks, shut down the roads. This is not AI, guys. Real general strike. Look at these boulders that they put across the roads. Major obstacles. Shut it down indefinitely. You want to get the government to listen to you? Indefinite general strike. My guess is they're going to send the military into crackheads. They usually do. Finally, a little bit of a sad rest in power. This guy named Greg Biffle would have been 56 years old today. He's a NASCAR legend. We talked about him last year on How Did We Miss That during Hurricane Helene. He was flying sorties in his own personal helicopter to rescue people and deliver aid supplies to people that were stranded. And I wanted to bring a eulogy by a guy that I'm not a fan of, that I got fooled by, that I can clearly see as an op and a propagandist, but was instrumental during Hurricane Helene at communicating to everybody else what was happening. And he was one of the first people, by the way, that knew what had happened to Greg Biffle, who had died in a plane crash, along with his wife and 2 children. My wife is filled with messages about Greg. It dawned on me that he left something behind that few ever do. As I was scrolling through my phone, I realized that the messages pouring in with love for Greg weren't just from the wealthiest and the most famous, though there were many of those. What struck me, and I can't get over it, is the messages from the unassuming mountain men, men who few will ever know their names, men who silently helped their neighbors after the storm, who received no recognition because they didn't want any. It was these men, the ones you'll never meet, the ones who never took credit, the ones who kept their heads down and did the work. It was these hillbillies of Western North Carolina that brought him to tears. They had Greg's number, and they called him to check on him after seeing the news of the crash. And this morning it hit him like few things have, that every single one of us that knew Greg could have done anything at all. And for nearly a year, he chose to spend his life caring, building, loving, and serving a group of people he never met and asking for nothing in return. What he left behind was a vast ocean of kindness to people who are often forgotten and left behind. And these mountain men, they knew it. All they wanted to do was somehow make it up to him one day, and now they can't. I know nothing of NASCAR. I know nothing of Greg Biffle, the driver. But every single one of us here in Western North Carolina knows of Greg Biffle, the hero. I believe this is one of his helicopter missions. What a fucking shame. And you see how all these places are flooded out from Helene. All the roads were washed out. Devastation. Remember that? Remember how the Biden administration just abandoned them? Greg flew in his personal helicopter at his own expense to help his neighbors. And he was rich, yeah. He had money. That's what it's for. This is what it's for. If you can't help the people around you in times of need, what good is it? Look at what he's flying over. And this is just to remind people of what people in North Carolina were dealing with after Hurricane Helene. Rest in power, Greg Biffle. Thanks for the help. All right. GoFundMe's and then we're out. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. You can leave a tip over there one time or monthly. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Subscribe monthly over there. IndieNewsNow.com. You can keep the media free. INNnewsletter.com and Indie Media Today over at Substack. All right. And then we're going to get to real quick. Boom. Shanda. Shanda, again, is at Fred Hutch now. This was after her last day of chemo. Second line. She had done 2 different rounds. She's now at Fred Hutch. Natalie Williams in chat has been sending her stuff. We are sending big hugs and big love and big healing and warmth to Shanda, who's going through a new round of experimental treatment right now. Fuck cancer. Shanda's GoFundMe is here. Her last post was on December 9th. We read that a couple of weeks ago. And again, I'm going to link to her GoFundMe and put that in all the chats while we're live. Good. I'm glad Cowboy Kitty is here. Cowboy Kitty said that he took some of the money and tried to file an appeal for Natalie, his sister-in-law, who is in the process of being deported to Ukraine. She may also be. I'm not sure where she is now. Maybe he can update us. But she also needs our help. There's been no income. She was locked in an ICE facility for months and months and months and months, and no ability to earn. Her daughter is working, I think, or in school. But if there's anything we can do to help at Christmas time for any of these folks, man, I know it's so tough out there for everybody. I'm gonna again put these GoFundMe's out there, because if somebody wants to help and is able to, I certainly want them to be able to. And then finally, we've got Justice for Aspen. Aspen Martin is the daughter of activist Halo Benson. Aspen is also an activist, both of them in the Assange, Oklahoma for Assange group. Aspen was holding up signs and painting flyers and mailing out postcards to people all over the country to help her mom. She got into the wrong car. She went to a music festival in an RV with a guy, and it turns out on the way home they got pulled over, and the cops found a massive amount of drugs and accused everyone in the RV of drug trafficking, and she's now facing decades in prison. She didn't even know there were drugs in the car out, and not the ones that they're talking about. It's a real problem, and she needs help with a legal fund. We helped get her to her first milestone, which is $12,500. That's enough to be able to hire a lawyer to do discovery, but there's a lot more that's ahead of her. You can learn a little bit more about it by going to linktr.ee/justice and the number 4 Aspen. That has links to the live stream, to the one-on-one I did with her, to the wonderful article that Descent Bloom wrote about her and about her story. You can also, again, link to her a press kit, and I believe there should be a link to her website to buy her artwork and commission and donate to the GoFundMe. That's all right there at linktr.ee/justice, the number 4 Aspen. All right. And finally, Indie News Now. I talked about this website. It is a website. I figured, let me show it to you. This is the website that I built that aggregates news 24/7 from over 100 sources using RSS feeds, using crawlers on the channels and sites that I've told it to look towards, and it's updating in real time all the time. You can also break it down again by category. So if you just want to read articles or you just want to see videos, you can do that. Again, there's also a watch live section where anytime INN is live, including right now, we are embedding the stream on this website. I also mentioned the Stripe link to keep the news free. This is where you would click there and you can gift $5, any one-time payment method of any amount, and that would go right into our Stripe account, which goes into our bank account. And then finally, there's a button here and here to check out the latest merch. That's at our Big Frog merch store, INN merch store. Okay. And you can get an INN t-shirt. We've got t-shirts there for as low as $19. If they're in black, it's $3 more. I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. There's me with the red tie. I still, again, I'm trying to get them to put a green tie version on the site. And then we've also got an Indie News Now t-shirt. So you can rep the show, you can rep the site, advertise the site for us by wearing the colors and wearing the name IndieNewsNow.com. And then we've also got a beanie, and I've got one on order. I'm waiting for it. I can't wait for it to get here. Reef already has one. And get yourself a beanie, $19. Where are you going to get a beanie for $19? And it's not really a beanie. It's just a knit cap. All right, for the winter time. You don't have a warm hat for the winter, and you need one, and you can't afford it, let me know. I'll send you an INN beanie. But if you're able to and of means, pick up an INN beanie. They're great. They're really warm and comfortable, according to Reef, who has one. And here again is the link to pick up an INN beanie. And what was the other thing I wanted to show? Oh, an INN logo sticker. So you get stickers to sticker up your laptop or anywhere else that you put stickers. Shout out to everybody that's already shopped at the shop there and purchased items to support independent media, rep the name, and that's just yet another way to fight the algorithm and to educate people about what it is we do here, because the suppression is real. Okay, fam. Well, I'm going to wish everybody Merry Christmas. I'm going to wish you a Happy New Year, because we're going to be off next Tuesday night. We'll be back the first Tuesday in January with a brand new show. Stay tuned to subscribe to Indie Media Today. There will be clips from this show emailed out all week. Tech tips articles that I'm going to do about what's going on over at Rumble, as well as what's going on at Substack and some other stuff. Subscribe to INNnewsletter.com to get all the 12 days of Fuck Israel, plus a lot more. And window clings, that's a good idea, Vicky. I'll talk to our guys over at Big Frog. They only really have wearables or stickers, but I can certainly ask for that. And yeah, we'll be back next year. I'll be back also Sunday night. We'll have an Uncensored Boats, Reef and I. But as far as new stuff, we'll be back next year with all new stuff. And I will tell you all, I love you. I thank you so much for supporting me and supporting this network and supporting this endeavor. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever, fam. Have a good night, and we will see you real soon. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So I try to sit down with my wife and watch TV, but I just see propaganda elevating the police in the simplest of sitcom banter, and tiny little altars full of offerings to corporate masters in every well-planned wide pan shot of the name brand stocking up the pantry. Pull back one long tracking shot out to the garage to the logo on the Camry. Nice tight shot of the Camry, close-up view of the Camry, slow pan up on the Camry, long slow zoom to the unmoving human who's up in the front with the tube pumping fumes to him straight from the back of the Camry. Ashamed he just could not provide for himself, let alone for his family. It's a blue pill mindset that spent 2020 making dance beats.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride, and thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
Ignorance is bliss, which explains why a lot of us are so fucking happy. Quick to take the trip for all its trappings. Never one to ask what's up, what's going on, or God forbid what's happening. A lot of us would strap into the ride and then spit right in the eye of the guy whose job it is to snap your fastenings. But maybe we're all born with that capacity. Maybe each of us comes standard with humor, compassion, malice, and audacity. Some of us are blind to the system, but some see it fine and say this